Good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, and it is Tuesday, July 14th, and we are calling to order. And with that, we will ask Mr. Solero, would you join us, or lead us in the salute of the flag?
I will. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And with that, Madam Clerk, we'll go to roll call.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Bob Lucy, our chair, is absent this morning. Marcia Burke-Bigler, vice chair.
Here?
Kitty Jung is present via telephone.
Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Von Hartung via Zoom.
Present.
Jeannie Herman.
Here.
Assistant County Manager Dave Solero.
Here.
Assistant District Attorney David Watts-Vial via Zoom.
Here by Zoom.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Parent, County Clerk. You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And with that, Mr. Manager, we'll go to public comment.
We will. All right, Madam Chair, that takes us to item number 3, which is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I see we have one voicemail and 3 emails, so I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. We'll go to the voicemail first.
Commissioner meeting agenda item. Anne-Marie Grant, 6/30/2020, County Commissioner meeting agenda item 3, public comment. Since I have to hear this every day of my life, you will as well. This is my brother as he was being killed at the jail begging for his life.
Please don't do this. Please don't do this. So they please turn it out. Pull this out. Ow! Don't you understand that we're trying not to take it off right now? You gotta bend your legs or else we can't take it off, Carter. Keep your pushing legs up and push the body down. You gotta watch the legs, madam. Ow! The other option, we can undo the car and just control his arm. Ow! Ow! Undo the cuffs. There we go. Sorry, you want to switch over me? If we get him flat, we can undo the cuff. And so we can take it. You take his first, get him as deep into the throw as we can get him.
That was the fatal decision, to get him deep into the cell and put him face down prone. 40 minutes my brother was hogtied. That's longer than most of the meetings you all hold.
Okay.
Next up, we have an email from Tammy Holtstill. Good morning, Commissioners. Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. I do not believe these meetings are legal. I believe these meetings are a violation of the open meeting law because we are not able to attend in person. On your agenda is Lemon Valley, as your staff has put together with their expertise. I believe this expertise is in question, and your ability to do the right this is also. The proof is in the last 3 years. Number 1, no response for almost 3 months of asking for help for the residents with photos and being here in person. Number 2, only when Governor came out did Washoe County respond. Number 3, quote, all residents will be back in their homes and in their lives. Chair Lucy, that has not happened. Number 4, your engineer, Dwayne Smith, decides a pipe should go across Lemon Drive. When asked a direct question, won't this pipe do exactly like the current culvert pipes? He said no, and that I didn't know what I was talking about. What happened? It had to be pulled like the other original culvert pipes. Who's smarter now? Number 5, state of emergency declared in March and pulled out in April. By doing so, the cost of the Pompeii protection was not funded under the state of emergency. Whose fault is that? Not the residents. It was yours for approving the pushing the previous county manager to cancel it when the state of Nevada was asking you not to do so. This way they could assist. I call that stupid and short-sighted. So when looking at the presentation, please remember Washoe County put a sewer plant in the 100-year floodplain. The cost to protect that plant is your fault, not the residents. Cost of staffing is and has been in question by the state during the state of emergency, and I see this as greedy. There will be more later on the actual item. Thank you. Next is an email from Elise Weatherly. Since no one seems to consider me worth listening to, I'm backing up and deleting my well over 2,000 blogs in the newbereans.com. Every once in a while, like every time I read one, I get a kick out of it. Here's an example from December 22, 2018. The Coward's Creed. I solemnly swear, and I could be lying, to uphold the Coward's Creed, the creed of long ago when confronted with the truth. I shall run and hide. I shall not confront my accusers, nor shall I be bold in my convictions. I promise, and I might be lying, to uphold the unity of all mankind by whitewashing and compromising those things I know are true. I swear to set the blame on others for telling me and others the truth. I hold up my left hand in my swearing and put my other hand down, nowhere to be seen. I will be ashamed of the gospel and will try to gain the praise of man rather than the praise of God. I solemnly swear, even though I am told somewhere in a book I cannot mention that I shouldn't do this, that my yes should be yes and my no should be no, to do whatever it takes to get me ahead in the world. Doing my best to forget that this is not the end of things. To admit the truth of this matter would be offensive to others, so I must hold my peace to keep my peace. Amen. Elise Weatherly of the current defunct business called the King's Conduits before the CDC became the God of our nation. And our last public comment under agenda item number 3 is from Daniel Purdy. Agenda item 3, Daniel Purdy, brother of Thomas Purdy, murdered by Reno PD and officers at the county jail. Every time I think about the way my brother was murdered, hogtied, and begging for his life, it infuriates me that people in your community are treated like animals. I don't expect any of you to understand or care for you, have proven that with your voters time and time again that you do not care about your community. You're nothing but vote seekers. I will be coming out to Reno, Nevada in September. I only hope that everything is opened back up so I can appear in front of your board personally, so that you have to look at me in the eyes and will I tell you what my brother's life meant to me and the rest of my family. As I've stated before, I will be out feeding the homeless in our community on Labor Day. I welcome any commission to come down and help feed the homeless with us to provide your community how much you care about them. And that concludes the emails I have on agenda item number 3.
Okay, do we have any Zoom comments? All right, we have no other public comments, so we will close public comment and bring it back to the board. And Mr. Manager, we're on to item 4.
Yes, item number 4 is Commissioner County Manager's announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commission updates, requests for information on future topics for future agendas, and no discussion among commissioners will take place on this item.
Thank you. And I see that Commissioner Herman has something she would like to add. So, Commissioner Herman, would you please take the floor?
Is your mic on, Commissioner?
I'm sorry.
I wondered if her mic was on.
Oh,
Says it's on.
Okay.
yeah, I think it's on now.
Okay, all right. Touchy, I guess. Me and technology. I just had a few calls this last month, people questioning their waste management bills. And this one lady has a house that she lives in plus a rental, and it's the same exact service, which isn't the best, but it's the same service, but one is 50-something and one's 70-something. So I thought maybe we should look into that and find out why the billings are so different. And it's all, like I said, for the same service. And I just was going through a bunch of paperwork the other day, and in 2019, in our strategic direction, just a thought about this here, and one of the points was elevating the quality of life so our community is a great place for everyone to live, regardless of their means. Just something to think about. Okay, Mr. Solero is taking care of a couple things that I gave him this morning, and then the other item that I wanted to discuss was I still have the same reason for looking into 7B1, 7B2, and item 8, and that is that the people are represented better that live in that valley for these things to occur, which would be the 2 contracts that we'd be paying for to research some things that pretty much have already been researched. But anyhow, just representing the people, and that's why I'm commenting on that again, and wishing that they had not come back on the agenda, but it seems like there's a determination to put them on the agenda, so thank you very much.
Anything else, Commissioner Herron?
No, thank you. very
Okay,
much.
I'm sorry, Mr. Manager, I forgot to ask if you had something, and I see you do.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you very much. Just wanted to make one note on the agenda today, actually 2 notes. Item number 16 has been requested to be pulled off the agenda, so we will not hear that item today. And also, I've received an email from the applicant on item number 20, which is an appeal from the Planning Commission. They would request, since Commissioner Lucy is not available, to have that heard on the 21st, so next week. So I think we will open public comment since it was properly noticed, and then the request is to continue that item. So those are the 2 things I have today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hartong, did you have anything?
Nothing today, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jung?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I do.
Okay,
I would like staff to be looking at and perhaps bringing back to us if they have to. I know we have this money that we received regionally, and each individual government received a different amount based on formulas from the feds to be spent by the end of this calendar year. And I believe a really important thing that we need to be looking at as a region is a place for where those who are unhoused, either because there's no room in our shelters or they are not comfortable in a shelter, can be placed somewhere that is sanctioned camping grounds with, law enforcement, social workers, but most importantly, to just get off the ground. We need proper toilets that don't need to be cleaned by people, which they do all over in Europe. We need proper refuse and waste disposal so that these unsheltered human beings can safely live while we are still living under the COVID restrictions. And this needs to be done sooner rather than later. There have been many upcroppings of makeshift camp areas, as you're all aware. That's only going to get worse as we no longer have eviction protection. And so I think it would be a good idea to create, maybe 3 different places throughout this valley that's close to bus lines, et cetera, so that these unsheltered human beings can have a place that they are safe, they are protected, and most importantly, the public health is protected. They have a place to put their waste, and they have a facility to go to for their human waste. So I really need that back from staff before next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Okay, I have a couple of things, if no one else has anything, a couple of things I wanted to get on the record. I would like to see the STR ordinance back on our calendar in August, please. And I know that Kelly Mullen is working on that, so if we could get that on the agenda at preferably the first meeting in August. It's really a problem in Incline Village, as everybody knows, and unfortunately right now, because of the closures in other states, we have even more people coming in, so it's really become a problem. Additionally, I know that we've been discussing cabs. We've had several meetings with commissioners and staff regarding cabs. I would like to ask if we couldn't get the issue of what are we going to do about cabs and how are we going to amend our cab regulation back on the agenda also in August. From my perspective, the Incline Village cab really needs to have the ability to speak out and have issues brought to them before the cab that they can discuss that are going to have a direct bearing on their community. Not just things like SDRs, but signs on the roads and, COVID and where we are in COVID and all of the various different things that happen that have a direct bearing on that community. They see it as their form of knowing what the county is doing. And so I'd really like to get that back up and running. Additionally, I think Commissioner Jung's point on finding tent grounds or whatever we can do for safe keeping. I had the opportunity to meet with the representatives of the row, and they are looking for the municipal governments here to help them get the people who are currently, the homeless who are currently housed in the event center moved out by the first week of August. And that is quickly approaching us. So we really need, as Commissioner Jung has indicated, to move forward positively and see if we can't figure that out, how we're going to do that. And let's find some places to get people up off the river and get people safe. And I know that it has been brought before CHAB, and I know the CHAB representatives are taking it back to their government, their own government. So please consider this, me as the CHAB person bringing it back to our government, that we really need to look at this as a very hot issue, very important. And then additionally, one last thing, I had brought this up at a previous meeting that we look at taking $500,000 out of the CARES Act money that came to us, and that we take that $500,000 and put it into a special fund for local businesses, local small businesses that did not get funds from the 2 tranches that came from Congress. And there are a number of them that have that, and they are in need of extra money to kind of put up barriers, to get masks, to get PPE, whatever it is they need to do. And so I think we need to set this fund up. And I know that County Manager Brown has had a conversation with Christine, Ms. Bolotech, and I would really like to see us move forward sooner rather than later on that. Also, there again, it's something that we can do to kind of help our community recover from COVID as we continue to move forward. And I do have a question based on Commissioner Herman's concerns. Are we in a position where we need to move forward on the Lemon Valley Lake? Who knows how long it's going to be before the governor releases it to us to phase 3 that would then allow us to have public back into our facilities. Right now, with the spike that's going on, we certainly know that is not going to happen anytime soon. So do you have any idea where we're at on that? And do we really need to do this now, or can we push it back until such time as, and that may be next year, such time as we're in phase 3? Mr. Manager.
So Chair, Dave Solero for the record. We talked long and hard about that with the recent directed by the governor to extend Phase 2 and the open meeting law through the end of July. And, the board kind of being on a break for a couple of those meetings in July. We don't know where this is going. And there are a couple of contracts here that we'd really like to get started. As you recall, these items came from our work regarding Lemon Valley closed basin flooding and our hazard mitigation program. And so these are three actually items that were identified in there that we'd like to make sure that there are no fatal flaws so we can continue to move forward. So, I would recommend that at a minimum we discuss those contracts or allow those contracts to move forward so that we can get working on those pieces. The longer we delay, I think we run that risk of not being prepared if this is going to happen again. So just my 2 cents on that. Certainly the presentation about what we've been up to and what we've been doing and where we're at, that one could be put off, but we just don't know when the public is going to be able to show up in person.
Yeah,
So.
that's the whole problem in a nutshell. Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Commissioner Herman, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss?
No, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Hartung, Commissioner Jung, how are we? Anything tripped for you guys?
I do.
Okay. Commissioner,
Madam Chairwoman, thank you, Madam Chairwoman and staff. I also want to say, I want on the next meeting, the money that we have identified that would go through the criteria that none of these small businesses were ever in receipt of the federal dollars. How many are there? How much do we look? Because my concern is we're going to wait so long and talk so much about this that these people who didn't receive any of the stimulus money for whatever reasons that I don't understand, and that's staff's job, we need to get this money out to them yesterday. Not somebody who is living on the edge of a knife, as many small business owners know. They can't wait, and we can't wait either. We have no reason to hold on to this money and be so strategic if it has to be done by December. So I need that on the next meeting, and it needs to be ready to go and ready to issue the check. And then I do have a question about postponing either of those contracts that Commissioner Herman and the chairwoman brought up. What would it hurt us, Mr. Manager, if we did postpone those until, let's say, the next fiscal year? What is the negative or the loss that we could encumber? And you probably can't. I don't know if you. I don't know. Is the attorney on? I don't know if you can answer during this. But I would like to know what do you see as a risk as staff, and weigh that to the benefit of us needing to flush out the board-approved potential remediation. Thank you.
Commissioner Jung, as usual,
Madam Chair, this is Dave Watsby.
Okay.
Just to address the commissioner's concerns. They're legitimate concerns, but they should be addressed when the item is opened, if it's going to go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Watsfield.
And you can take items out of order, so if you wanted to move that up, you can do so.
Okay. We do know that, yes. Mr. Solero, did you have something you wanted to comment back?
Yeah, just one point of clarification on the CARES funding. Just wanted to make sure the board is aware that Washoe County has not actually received that money yet from the state. I believe there's a meeting today with the special session to talk about how to actually make that mechanism occur. So we are actively working in the manager's office on creating the program, but we have not seen the money yet. So we fully agree that the money needs to get put into circulation, and as soon as it is possible, we will be doing that. I know we are bringing an item back to the board as well on that topic. So,
thank you, Mr. Manager.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes, Commissioner.
I am requesting this to be on the agenda next week. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner, or Mr. Manager, would you make sure we get it on? And I was just going to say, Commissioner Jung, as usual, you get right to the point and hit what I wanted to say, and I appreciate you chiming in on that. And so with that, I see no other comments, so we will close item 4 and move on. Commissioner, let me ask Commissioner Herman, would you like to move the consent agenda up so that you could discuss those two items? Or are you okay to go ahead with Mr. Giesinger making his presentation? Okay. I think she's telling us to go ahead.
Yes.
All right, so we will move to item 5, Mr. Manager.
All right, Madam Chairwoman, item 5 is an appearance by Chad Giesinger, Washoe County Planning Manager, to discuss the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan update and provide information on key policy changes, implementation, and the role of Washoe County in the new plan. Just one matter before we get Chad on. I think that this is a very timely item, given the appeals and some of those other sorts of things that we're seeing through the board, for the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment. I do believe that with the regional plan update, some things have changed that this board needs to know about. And not only this board, but the community as a whole, most importantly, the community, because I know you all were deeply involved in kind of the direction that staff took while working through this with regional planning. So I think it's important for the community to understand what has changed, what we're doing, because it's different than the old setup. Which is very important in the way we approach planning items within our community. So very, very timely to have Chad here to talk about this item.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Good. Chad, Mr. Giesinger, are you around?
Chair Burkbigler, can you hear me?
I can. Welcome.
Can the commission hear me?
Can you hear us?
Hi, can the commission hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Can the commission hear me now?
Chad, are you there? We can hear you on this end.
Okay, great, thanks. Sorry
Great.
about that.
No problem.
A little challenging with the two screens. So my name is Chad Giesinger, Planning Manager for Community Services Department. Very pleased to be able to make this presentation to you today. Thank you, Dave, for that introduction. It has been about 9 months now since the new regional plan was adopted, so we would like to check in with the commission and go over an overview of the highlights of the major changes in the plan, and also to touch base with you on how we did on our priorities. If you'll recall, the members that participated in the update, we gave those commissioners several updates throughout the long, very long process, about 2 years, and wanted to see where we ended up on that. So here's an overview of what I'd like to discuss today, where we started, the BCC goals for the update. Remember, we set priorities early on in the update process. And now I'm going to refresh everyone's memory on some of the background, the context of how that update occurred, and give you an overview of some of the key outcomes, policy changes, and then some next steps we'll be having in front of us. So here's where we started. These are the top priorities that the BCC identified early on. The first one, annexations, only in the SOI and program of annexation. Wanted to address the density caps on commercial and industrial and on residential development. And we wanted to address the TMSA buckets and the definition of the TMSA. The protocol agreements were within the SOI, and then focus feedback from the experts. So how did we do on those priorities? Well, on annexations, we didn't really get there on that. The cities did not agree to forego using the alternative annexation procedure, figures annexation procedure, but they have committed in their recent master plan updates to prioritizing annexations within their SOI and within the program of annexation. On the density caps and commercial limits, we did pretty well there. We were able to get rid of the caps on in certain areas, and I'll go into more detail on that on the tiers later in the presentation. We were able to get the ability to do some non-residential uses in Tier 3, and then of course all of our existing master plan designations are grandfathered. On the TMSA, also made very good progress on the TMSA. The TMSA and the SOI are no longer the same thing. The bucket acreage concept has been removed, and the size of the TMSA is now based solely on the ability to accommodate population growth and the availability of infrastructure. On protocol agreements, that is identified as a future work program upon adoption, but we did make significant progress with the City of Sparks on rolling back their SOI in certain areas. And we did get agreement on a future work program to revisit these protocol agreements, and Reno said they might consider an SOI rollback. And then on the focused feedback from experts, that occurred throughout the update process. We had many experts provide testimony during the update hearings. We even got all 3 of the engineering managers from the local jurisdictions to do a workshop with us, and so there was quite a bit of feedback from experts. So some of the key changes to the plan, it looks much different and is structured much differently. We think it'll be much easier to use in the way it's been reformatted. Another key change was the inclusion of the concept of scenario planning. And that tool was used to understand the consequences of different development choices. Right? And then the third major change, a lot of cleanup of policies, the elimination of redundant policies, the intent to make the plan more implementable. And then this is really key, the regional planning really wanted to focus back on the NRS statutes that authorize regional planning in the first place. So just to refresh your memory, scenario planning, spent about a year on this at the beginning of the update process. If you recall the Hexagon mapping, basically regional planning has a robust data framework now where they've created a parcel fabric to understand the potential future development build out of various areas. And through this process, it was determined that the TMSA has plenty of capacity currently to accommodate the projected population and the anticipated growth. So these hexagons you can see there on the right were basically a ranking of development suitability of where we have excess capacity in our infrastructure and or where there was vacant land and would be efficient to develop in those areas. That led to the analysis of 4 different development scenarios. The first scenario being what if we didn't do anything? Just basically the classic scenario, just keep developing as we have been. And impacts were looked at in terms of infrastructure, the amount of land utilized, things like that. The second concept was what if the Karen ring was intensified and we focused maybe say 15 to 20% more development within the Karen ring. The third one was the Smart Greenfield scenario, and this is where the county can come into play because obviously the county is mostly suburban in the jurisdiction. And then the fourth was the infill scenario, really focusing on intensifying the core area. So based on surveys, public surveys and input, the infill scenario was identified as the preferred scenario, but the second highest support was for the greenfield scenario. And that is potentially getting more density in already existing developed suburban areas where it makes sense and where there's available infrastructure. So Washoe County has quite a bit of the remaining greenfield area in the region, and so it can contribute greatly to this concept. And then with the removal of the 3 units per acre density cap, there is the potential for the county to approve higher density, which you've already seen come before you, a couple projects seeking to go to the high density suburban regulatory zone of 7 units an acre. So that's all already taking place. There are also now some higher tier areas in the county jurisdiction, which had never been the case before. So there's some tier 2 and also some tier 1 areas, which I'll go over a little bit later. And then that was all driven, these areas, the tier areas that we identified in the unincorporated area were driven on that Hexagon development suitability analysis I previously discussed. And just for a point of context, 7 units an acre, which is the high density suburban, that's about the density of the area over here off of Keystone north of the highway, just to give you some context. So here's how the new plan is structured. You can see here the policies have been broken into these categories of population growth, regional forum, public facilities, natural resources, and regional coordination. and these very closely align, or actually align exactly with the NRS statutes. So this is what's NRS as the purview of regional planning: population projections, limit preterm expansion, preserve natural resources, efficient public facilities, and intergovernmental coordination. So getting to some of the key policy changes, removal of the density caps, as I mentioned, that was the old policy 1.3.2, and elimination of the TMSA bucket acreage. And I think it's really important to point out that the TMSA did not expand as part of this update. And that is basically the first time that's occurred in the last 3 or 4 updates, as far as I'm aware. Another key policy change is introduction of a tiered land use concept in the regional forum approach. So going away from the TOD and the regional center concept. And then robust standards for justifying and analyzing tier amendments. There's new criteria there. And then this is a very key policy change. When we're looking at infrastructure criteria and availability, you cannot go beyond a 10-year max horizon for those planned facilities. In the past, you were able to utilize all 30 years of, say, a facility planning. Now it's capped at 10. Other key changes, there's a new concept called the rural development area. This is an existing concept in the old plan, but it's been reformatted. The old RDA is now the rural area, and the rural development area is now a new designation that the county can request. It would require a regional plan amendment, but it would allow you to go below a 5-acre lot size in the rural area within that potential clustering. The plan also calls for a regional public investment plan, a regional facility plan, if you will, called the PIP, and also a natural resources plan, which would also include a regional trails plan that's been being developed for several years now. The new plan does allow the county the ability in the Tier 3 area to do up to 3 acres of new non-residential land. That was a key policy change for the county. So in Tier 3, basically, which is most of the unincorporated area inside the TMSA, it's more or less locked down to its existing master plan category. So this would allow, say, in like nodes where you could do up to 3 acres there. There's a new performance review process, more or less a pre-development process where you can go talk to regional staff about your proposed amendment or master plan change at the beginning of the process instead of at the end of the process finding out that conformance is going to be a problem. And then some housekeeping items. The Reno State Corridor Joint Plan was eliminated from the regional plan. And as I alluded to earlier, there was a Sparks rollback, SLI rollback, and staff has already processed the master plan amendments to finalize that. So here's the new regional form map, and you'll see the tiers I've highlighted here with the red arrows, some of the areas in an incorporated county that have seen some changes. You'll see Sun Valley is actually designated as a Tier 1 area now, and that's more or less all the area within a half mile of the fixed bus transit route. There was a small area added in the north, and that's where the Highland Village project is RZA is currently being processed. And then North Spanish Springs has been designated, and that's the idea of the Smart Greenfield concept. That's all more or less 1 acre zoning right now, and so that could be intensified, thereby increasing housing potential in that area without having to expand the TMSA and go north of that pass there going into Warm Springs. Here's a close-up of the table. Mixed-use core is pretty much the downtown Reno area. Tier 1, you've got no maximum density constraints, and then in Tier 2, it's up to 30 units an acre, and that's primarily because there's a lot of Tier 2 land in Reno. In the Damani Ranch area, for example. And then Tier 3 is just your existing with that allowance for the additional 3 acres of commercial potentially. And then you have your rural area, which is everything outside the TMSA, which is 5 acre lots are the smallest you can go there. So if a tier amendment is proposed, this is another new addition to the plan. There will be stricter criteria for looking at amending, say a tier of TMSA. Here is the criteria, housing mix potential, proximity, the ability to have transit, things of that nature. And a key thing to point out here is if you're proposing to leapfrog, say, from tier 3 to tier 1, it's the cumulative criteria of each tier that's involved. Here are some of the facility standards. As you can see, it's broken down into water, wastewater, flood control, and stormwater, transportation, and schools. And if a facility's service standard cannot be met, then a feasibility analysis is now required. Some more detail on the rural area, formerly known as the rural development area. Still have the 5-acre minimum lot size. No extension of water or sewer is allowed from the TMSA into the RA. So if you had an area that you wanted to do that, you would need to do a regional plan amendment and get into the TMSA. No more than 2% of residential growth over the plan horizon can be located in the rural area, and regional planning will be tracking that. And then the rural area includes freestanding communities that already exist, so like Gerlach, Wadsworth, those types of areas. And the plan does allow the potential for new freestanding communities with certain criteria met. The plan still includes resort services areas. Resort services area, currently only Mount Rose is the only designated resort area. And then we do have this new rural development concept, and this was to get at unique areas in the county that might be suitable for some residential or commercial development but wouldn't be in the TMSA. And so you would have to do a regional plan amendment, discuss how water and sewer will be provided, and conduct a fiscal analysis on those areas. Regarding the sphere of influence, as I mentioned, it's been separated from the TMSA, and the SOI is now back to performing its original function, which is to identify areas that the city plans to annex into. And the TMSA is now non-jurisdictional. If you recall, we had jurisdictional TMSA areas, and that's where that bucket concept came from. So that's been eliminated, so there's just one TMSA, and as I mentioned earlier, it did not expand its adequate capacity. Annexation policy, as I mentioned, cities are retaining the right to do the NRS 268-670 annexations. However, they have committed to annexing within the SOI whenever possible, and programs of annexation are still required to be submitted for performance review. So next steps is kind of a three-legged stool. Our immediate needs for short-term conformance, we've been working with regional to identify things that we needed to get done right away, and those are currently being processed by staff. And then there's some longer-term items which we intend to address as part of a comprehensive update to the county's master plan. In fact, we are having a master plan update kickoff meeting later this afternoon. We will be updating all of the elements and area plans. It's been about 15 years since the county has done a comprehensive update to its master plans. And then the third item there is a work program that Regional is putting together to create the public investment plan and the natural resources plan. I'm going to skip over this one for sake of time. Here are some of the details of the natural resources plan. They're looking at maybe expanding resource areas that should be protected in addition to the development constraints area. And this will be worked on in conjunction with all of our partners in the region. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Giesinger. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner
Madam
Hartog?
Chair. Yes,
Go right ahead, sir.
thank you. So first, I wanted to thank you for your leadership. This happened during, much of this happened during your time as chair at the Regional Governing Board. And then just a couple of questions. And these are questions for the board. with respect to annexation under 268, 670, do we want to go to the legislature and potentially ask to put a cap on the annexation time? If you annex it, within a certain period of time, or you annex it at a time frame rather, that annexation only lasts for a certain period of time, let's say 10 years. Instead of annexing and just holding it sort of into perpetuity, and that's always been an issue. We've seen that out here in Spanish Springs with what's above the high school with Section 33 in Spanish Springs. I also wanted to make mention, and I'm still a little uncomfortable with respect to the tiers because we had property that was in the county rated at a lower tier when similar property, literally right next to, especially out in some of the North Valleys, was rated at a higher tier. And why weren't those properties in the city downgraded to a lower tier just as they were in the county? And I know we're pretty much past that, but it's still a point of contention for me. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I understand everything else. I was very appreciative of the city of Sparks rolling back the SOI. That just has made life a lot easier in many cases. And I'm hopeful that we'll see some of that same rollback at some point with respect to the city of Reno. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Jung, did you have some questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Yes to what Commissioner Hartung said about annexation, that it should be a timed period. I have a question. It might not even be for you, Mr. Chad Giesinger. And that is, when we're looking at annexation and these facilities in a more regional area, in a more regional philosophy, how come we don't look at fire protection and law enforcement as critical infrastructure?
So, Commissioner Young, thank you for the question through the chair. I do believe that Reno does review potential fire service issues as part of their annexation review process, but I can't speak to exactly how they determine whether or not a given annexation area is going to be able to be served by their existing fire service and police service apparatus.
So what I'm asking, Madam Chairwoman, thank you, Mr. Giesinger, and direction to the people that represent us on the regional plan, that needs to be considered. I know you've probably already adopted this and you're moving on, but that, and Commissioner Hartung, that needs to be included with putting a time on it too, because of course they review it to their benefit. They have no reason not to, and we lose specifically our fire revenue, and they say they cover it, but they never do. And this is that, going back to something I'm actually bored of saying because it's never been changed, and that is that it is not a regional plan and it's not whole until you address that. So I would like this commission, we need a next agenda. So next Tuesday, I'm requesting an agenda item to discuss exactly this, because we're going to have another special session and then session's going to hit us. So I want us to be ready to go with all of our research on this, because it's not fair and it's not regional at this point. That is not to take away from the three commissioners who represent us there, because I think it's a great plan. Please don't get me wrong in any of that. You moved us into the 21st century. While I don't fundamentally and philosophically support a regional planning governing board, I think it's done what the lawsuit did, and I think it's just another stop for another silo to make more money and make more housing expensive. I know that you're working with under the law, and I say let's start changing that law. But bravo, fabulous work on staff, and these commissioners that represent me on the Regional Planning Governing Board. This is beautiful. And this is the first time I've looked at it, heard anything about it, because I trust the three of you are doing what's best for our constituents. I do have a question. Since we figured out that all citizens across the board in Washoe County say they would prefer infill, I need staff to come back within the month, so not Tuesday, but within a month, and give me some of the best practices and how we as a region, and maybe we can use COVID money, I don't know, as a region can incentivize infill so that we can say, you asked for it, we gave it to you. Here's what we're doing to incentivize it. I understand it's money, but it also could be different levers we could pull that make it cheaper for a developer to be incentivized to do the actual infill that every one of our citizens want. And when I say everyone, you can go out to Commissioner Herman's area in Palomino Valley, which is beautiful, probably one of the most beautiful places of all of the county. And if you ask people there, how do you think we should grow? They say infill. And I go, but you're not infill. And they're like, exactly. So it's not just city dwellers that want infill. It's countywide, and now we have the data. So I need that back within a month from our subject matter experts. What is the ways that we can incentivize this and start talking about it at the regional level to do what the voters voted us to do? And they're all in agreement with that. So please, let's talk about that again. I don't want to beat the whole, is there a fundamental need for regional? We've already done that over and over, but I am in full support, Madam Chairwoman, to Mr. Commissioner Hartung. I think you have established yourself, sir, as our planning expert on our board. Sorry to anybody else that thinks that they have. It just means I'm ignorant if I'm wrong. But I trust you, Mr. Commissioner, that you have digest and understand this forwards and backwards. And I know you understand what I'm talking about, fire. And I say, yes, let's move forward. Let's change some things that you believe we make. And if we can't get it done in the legislature, then we can table it. Let's not go and have a fight for the compulsory idea of having a fight. Let's just see if we can't get an appetite for it and make our case. But I want to end that with a tremendous thank you to all of you. I know I pressured you a lot. Where's the regional plan? Where's the update? Not having any clue how hard this is. And I want to tell you, I think it's beautiful, and I'm proud of it. And the best part is, I'm dangerous enough now to believe I can explain it. So thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. We appreciate your kind words. Any other questions? Commissioner Herman, did you have anything? Okay. Do we have any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Giesinger. Oh, Commissioner Hartung.
No, I just wanted to chime in. I don't disagree with Commissioner Jung at all. I think looking at the tranche of services, it's not just water and sewer and transit, depending on the level of intensification. But I agree with her. It is those basic public services that people need and expect. With respect to fire and police services, I think she's spot on, and these are things we have talked about, Commissioner. And so thank you. I feel like we made some huge headway in many of these areas where we just had no foothold whatsoever. So I'm looking forward to getting this thing ratified and getting it completely done, and then we'll. In my opinion, look at some of the other areas that we can try to take some bites out of, especially annexation, and then the disproportionate level of tiers, especially out in the North Valleys. And it's not that I want to see Washoe County's land moved up. I want to see the city of Reno's land moved down, because they cannot provide the services required for that level of tier. So again, thank you, Mr. Giesinger. You've done a great job. Chad, you were beyond amazing. Your leadership in this was truly amazing. And again, you, Madam Chair, thank you so much for your leadership in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. I see Commissioner Herman has.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Me next.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to add to that a little bit. We did bring that subject matter up during one of our meetings downtown before the final plan was put together. And we were told that the NRS didn't allow that, they didn't allow for that sort of thing to be in the plan. That's the way I understood it, but if we could change it at the legislature, that would very definitely be a wonderful thing, because fairness is a good thing.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Yes, the point they made was that we did have to go to the legislature to change it because that's where it sits in the statutes. Commissioner John.
Do we have to go to the legislature, or could we get the cities to agree to it? I mean, the legislature can't tell us that we can't make our own agreements on that, too. So, Mr. Commissioner Hartzog, let's think about that. You and I can strategize. I do want to say one final thing so that I'm not remiss. I know that you guys weren't all in agreement on this regional plan, and I know not all the region was in agreement on this regional plan, and I get it because we have such competing interests, and we also have very different constituents. But I can say this, and I will say it proudly, it's a hell of an improvement, and I'm all about if you go somewhere, you make it better, even if it's just a little better. And this is more than a little better to me, and I know that's a slugfest, and it's hard, and it's technical, and I'm telling you, I'm pleased. Did I get everything I would dream in there? No. Guess what? In the real world, I never do. So I think I got to tell you, and even those of you that voted no for it, I know you made it better by being there and still not in support of it. So again, I think it is a new day, and I do feel like we are in the 21st century using resources and infrastructure rather than political will and bullying. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Any other comments? I see none. So, Mr. Giesinger, thank you very much. Thank you for all the work you put in and all the rest of the staff. You guys did yeoman's work, and we appreciate everything you did for us as we worked through this process. And thanks for the presentation. And Mr. Manager, we will move on to item 6.
All right, Madam Chair. Item 6 is an appearance by Bill Brewer with the Nevada Rural Housing Authority Executive Director and Diane Arvizo, the NRHA Director of Home Ownership Programs. They'll provide a brief presentation on the NRHA program in support of the request for transfer of Washoe County Share of Local Government 2020 Private Activity Bonds, which is item 10 on the agenda.
Thank you. So we have Mr. Bill Brewer and Ms. Diane Arvizo. Are you guys online?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Good morning. So I will give my apologies for Bill Brewer, who is not able to attend. He had a conflicting meeting that is running long. He's on a hearing that he couldn't get out of. So I apologize for that, but I am with you this morning, and it's a pleasure. So thank you very much. And you said my name correctly. Thank you. Diane Arvizo, Director of Home Ownership Programs for the Nevada Rural Housing Authority. It is my pleasure to be with you here today with the Washoe County Board of Commissioners. I do want to share a little background. In 2006, the Nevada Rural Housing Authority launched the Home at Last program. You've probably seen our commercials on TV here locally in Washoe County, of which I'm a resident, so I love that. Our down payment assistance program, and originally in 2006, was funded by private activity bond cap. We'll call that PABC because it's a mouthful. Washoe County was part of that original launch, and I want to thank you for that. That first program, you transferred about $5 million to help us launch that program, and that helped us with 51 families getting into home ownership. We've come a long way since then, with last month hitting our 9,000th family being helped into affordable home ownership. So we just celebrated that milestone. And so here we are, that 9,000th family has helped us get to $1.8 billion in affordable mortgages, over $52 million in down payment assistance, and $27 million in federal tax savings that's been returned to our homeowners through our mortgage credit certificate program. That money actually gets reinvested right into our local communities. Nevada Rural Housing Authority has assisted 3,090, we've actually probably hit 4,000 this month because we're having record-setting months right now, home buyers in Washoe County. Today, Nevada Rural Housing Authority is requesting Washoe County's allocation of unused private activity bond cap. again, PABC for short. And that's about 5.8 million to make it an easy figure, which we will use to continue funding our Home at Last single family program for homeownership. Nevada Rural Housing Authority pools the unused private activity bond cap from cities and counties across Nevada so that we can actually put that money collectively to good work. We use the program or the funds to actually fund those programs like the Mortgage Credit Certificate Program, which we also call the MCC. That MCC program, as I mentioned, provides a federal tax credit to home buyers that are low to middle income taxpayers. That tax credit is about 20% of the mortgage interest that they pay, that they get returned to them through that credit. And that money comes to them every year for the life of the loan. So that really makes affordable homeownership long past just getting into the home. And that helps us meet that mission. At the front end, when they're qualifying for the home loan, the IRS actually allows that tax credit to be treated as additional qualifying income. It really is income. So that helps lower debt to income ratios, which is critically important for those who carry high student loan debt. The home buyer can use that MCC tax credit, of course, to open the door to home ownership from the beginning and then be able to afford that mortgage long into home ownership. The transfer of PABC to Nevada Rural Housing Authority, as you know, does not create any obligation or debt for Washoe County. If the unused allocation of PABC is not transferred to us or designated to a specific project before September 1st, it's going to revert back to the Department of Business and Industry. You know this. You've been getting that allocation every year. And ultimately, those funds will be used for an undesignated project, wherever it happens to be, that's not yet determined by the director. By transferring the unused PABC to the Nevada Rural Housing Authority today, you will know that your allocation of PABC is going to be used to continue the homeownership programs, specifically the Home at Last program that opens the door to affordable homeownership for citizens right here in Washoe County. The Nevada Rural Housing Authority's area of operation is defined as communities with population under 150,000. A lot of people don't realize that our rural area is actually broader in scope than one might think. In Washoe County, rural for us basically means everywhere in the county outside the city limits of Reno. Washoe County has transferred a total of $10.3 million in unused allocation of PABC to the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, but it's been a long time. The last transfers you gave to us was in 2006 and 2007, again, back when we kicked off the Home at Last program. And all these years later, the return on your initial investment has been $654.1 million in affordable mortgages to Washoe County residents. Yay! We're asking for your support in 2020 by requesting that you transfer your unused allocation of PABC to the Nevada Rural Housing Authority for the first time since 2007. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today. Of course, I'm here. I'm going to stick around with you via Zoom until the item is heard. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer that for you today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here and appreciate your comments. And I would ask the commissioners if anyone has any questions.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Madam, or Commissioner Jung.
Thank you, Ms. Arvizo. I have a question, and I might have missed it because I don't have your presentation, and I can't watch this live because it gives me vertigo because there's a time delay. Can you define for me what is low to mid income?
So there's different income limits for the Home at Last program. The Mortgage Credit Certificate Program is set by the IRS. So those income limits come out every year, and they're approximately 80% of the area median income.
So can you tell me what today is?
Yes, let me pull those up for you. Hang on just one second. And then for our down payment assistance program, it is dependent upon the loan type. And so for a government loan, which is typically like your FHA loan, which is most of what we do, it's $116,000 that is our income limit. And then for conventional loans, which home buyers can get rid of the mortgage insurance, we can go up to $135,000. So that's more for moderate income. So in Washoe County, families can earn up to $93,829 if there are 2 people or fewer in the home, or $107,904 for 3 or more people in the home. Those income limits just went up about a month or so ago.
Thank you very, very, very much for this information, and I hope you're working with our regional plan and Commissioner Hartung specifically to make sure that when we talk about the missing middle, which has been thrown around just like affordable housing, that's why I knew you would, as a program that is tested and has to be quantified, you would have the exact number. We need to start looking at that too, in terms of what is the missing middle and what is the wage these people are able to achieve here in Washoe County, everywhere but the city of Reno's jurisdiction. And if 2 or fewer people are making $93,829 a year and eligible for this, this is by its very nature, Miss, I'm not looking at your name, madam. Is it Arvizo?
Yes, that's correct.
Miss Arvizo has identified for us right there who's our missing middle. And what Miss Arvizo, to take that one step further, what is the average cost of the home that your clients have purchased in Washoe County in the last 3 years?
Well, of course, over the last 3 years, we've seen a significant increase. It's gone up from about $180,000 on an average purchase price to now about $245,000. So that
there you go.
Still, yes.
There you go.
And I will tell you that, of course, the mortgage credit certificate program is designed for taxpayers, you know, that are trying to make ends meet to make homeownership affordable. The down payment assistance program is designed for renters who are spending the majority of their income to make ends meet and cannot save up for down payment. These are highly qualified renters. These are people who make their mortgage payment, their rent payment, pay their bills on time, have good credit. And so they're deserving individuals that have worked hard to get into home ownership.
Right, and I think I would love it, Ms. Arvizo, and if you could send me your charter or your mission statement or your board or whatever. I think you or one of your subject matter experts needs to be somewhere around our regional planning and informing what exactly this missing middle is, because nobody has ever been able to define that for me in a way that I could quantify it. I don't like anecdotal because it doesn't tell me anything. So this is wonderful information. I love what you do. I'm jealous of your job. And this is our money well spent, so I'm all in favor, whatever we can do to support you. We know that our constituents are paying more than 30% of their income in housing at all levels. And any way that we as a county can get people to be home buyers, we get that property tax. And that property tax is what allows us to live in a civilized county. So I am fully in support of this and believe that this is, this is American, as patriotic as I can even think of right now. So bravo to you, bravo to what you do. And again, I envy what you do, and I hope, and I can tell you love it by your enthusiasm. I can't look at you, so I have no idea what you look like, but your enthusiasm shines through. And I'd like to talk more with you just so we can make sure that type of input that we can actually quantify is used in decisions that we make here on out. Even if it doesn't, we don't affect what a housing price is, but at least we know what we're talking about when people talk about the, quote, missing middle. And I think it's this right here. So wonderful job, wonderful work.
I appreciate that very much for your kind words. Very gracious. I will add, it's very important to note, our Board of Commissioners are appointed by the Nevada Association of Counties and League of Cities and Municipalities. So you are supporting us already. So thank you. And I will be happy to send a copy of our charter. Our mission is to promote, provide, and finance affordable housing opportunities for all rural Nevadans. So we definitely live and breathe and serve our mission every day. Also important to note, our executive director, Bill Brewer, who unfortunately could not be here today, is the president of the new Nevada Housing Coalition, which I'm sure you know has been instrumental in bringing lots of CARES money into the great state of Nevada. And so we're really pleased with the progress the coalition has been able to make. And I'm sure that had he been here, he would have been able to tell you a bit more about that, but maybe another day we can have him come and give you an update on that as well.
I would love that. And since you said that we are a member through the Nevada Association of Counties, I'll rely on Dagny Stapleton through the manager to get me all of this information. Here's the trouble why I've never really paid attention to this. It's your name. When you say rural, I don't even think it applies to my county. And when I heard you operationally define rural, which is any place in Washoe County not in the Reno city limits, I don't think of that as rural. So there's where my disconnect and not really paying attention to this was. And I'm so glad that you came today and reinforced this, because I know you've been before us before, or a representative. And yes, I would like that staff for Mr. Brewer to come as well and explain that to us. And thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, Ms. Arvizo.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Commissioner Hartung, did I hear you chime in?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. And I wanted to thank Ms. Arvizo for the great work that they're doing. It's a wonderful program. And in fact, my wife and I, some 33 years ago, qualified for a low interest loan through Nevada Housing. We still live in the same house. We could afford to make the payments. That wasn't it. We could afford the down, but the interest rates at the time were, mid-teens. And it was just very difficult. And I'll never forget, we had a 9.99% loan as our first loan, which, sub-10s was just unheard of in this particular era. But my question goes to this. And in fact, I got questioned on this because I was self-employed when we went for this loan, and it was somewhat difficult to prove that I was worthy enough to get this loan at the time. My business lasted and still is in place over 33 years later. But what's the length of employment? You say that some of these folks are highly qualified. Do you have a length of employment, Mr. Arvizo, that you use as a basis?
Excellent question. I want to congratulate you on your successful home ownership. You are a role model to many of our first-time home buyers, so thank you for that. And before I answer your question, I will also add that we are pleased to be able to provide below-market interest rates even to this day. Our lowest interest rate that we are publishing right now and have been carrying since March of this year is 2.75% for a 30-year mortgage. So of course, that's a fantastic rate to be able to help people into the door of homeownership, and it's very unlikely they'll ever be refinancing out of that rate. And to answer your question, self-employed home buyers typically need to have 2 years of tax return history. Here's the great thing. So we don't actually require separate applications for our program. The Home at Last program, we partner with local lenders. And in Washoe County, we have more active lenders living and operating their businesses right here in your community than anywhere in the great state of Nevada. It's phenomenal. So the lenders that participate to offer the Home at Last program are actually the ones that qualify the home buyers under the normal underwriting requirements of FHA, VA, USDA, and conventional loans, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We offer all 5 of those options. So we don't have any additional overlays that anybody has to jump through any hoops to make it more difficult to qualify. If they meet normal underwriting requirements, they will be eligible.
Thank you so much. And again, wonderful program. The reason I ask is there's so many self-employed folks in our region that, and it's just important. And I agree with Commissioner Jung. Home ownership, it's the basis for a great quality of life. If you can get people into owning their own home, it really does build great communities. So again, thank you so much. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Certainly, Commissioner Hartung, thank you. Any other questions? I see this is styled for possible action. What action are we looking for? Just approval of the report, or?
Dave, yeah, if you'd go ahead and jump in there, please.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Dave Watsvial. It is listed as for possible action that allowed you to have some back and forth with Ms. Arvizo. There is an item later on in the agenda that is not under the consent agenda that relates back to this NRHA request. You don't need to take any action on this item number 6 if you do not want to. You could accept the report. I don't believe there's anything that's in writing, so you don't need to do anything.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Watsvial. In that case, then we will thank you, Ms. Arvizo, for coming before us and making this presentation very interesting, as always, and we all love your program and the good work that you guys are doing, so thank you very much. And
It's my great pleasure, and I want to thank you all for your support. Thank you. I'll stick around in case there's any questions later when you hear the item.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda. Mr.
Madam
Manager.
Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, I should have mentioned it is an action item, so you do need to take public comment or call for it.
Oh, of course, sorry. Yes, of course. With that, we will ask the clerk if there is any public comment.
There is no public comment on this item.
And anything on Zoom? Okay, we have no public comment, so we'll close it and move on to item 7. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, item 7 is your consent agenda today. That includes items 7A through 7J. I do know Commissioner Jung had some questions earlier on items 7B1 and 7B2 related to timing. So with your permission, I'll go ahead and answer that question.
Certainly, go right ahead.
Sure. So items 7B1 and 7B2, certainly these can be put off till later. The reason we are bringing them forward is because funding is available in the capital improvement program as identified by this board from some water rights sales that were completed over the last couple of years. And so, staff is certainly eager to get some solutions put in place out in Lemon Valley. That can come at any time. And I know, as we go through this process whereby evaporation is doing some pretty amazing things out there at the lake, and the lake levels have dropped, and you'll hear about that here in a little bit. I do think it's important to keep this task moving forward, but certainly that is up to the discretion of the board. So.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question for Commissioner Jung.
All right, so commissioners, you heard Mr. Manager's response. So commissioners, do any of you have any questions, any desire to pull these 2 items, or you want to move forward with the consent agenda? What's your pleasure?
Madam Chair.
County Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you. I would prefer to leave them in the agenda for the simple reason we've funded them. Let's continue to move forward with the work that staff is doing. That's my preference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hartung. So in that case, I am looking for any public comments. Commissioner Jung.
Thank you. I would like to know from the commissioner of the district what her will and pleasure is, because listen, we don't have any money and we're not going to have any money. So if you're okay with us postponing this until, maybe next year, I'm okay with that too. Because it's not like, we're walking around begging to do projects. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that, Commissioner Herman.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Commissioner Herman.
The reasoning behind me requesting that originally was because the inability of the people that this affects have indicated to me that it just seemed like something that they should be in on, and we can't do that. We can't provide that. And if they are already funded, oh well, let's go ahead then and get it done. But that was the original intent.
I agree with you. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Commissioner. I know what you were going to do just now, but I wanted to just get that for my own, to understand what the real issues are here, sir. And I'll support the commissioner and the district to continue moving forward with this consent item. Before we make a motion on the consent item, I have a question about 7J, as in Jaybird.
Yes, go right ahead.
We're not a U.S. I thought, oh, yes, we are U.S. I'm like kjung at washoecounty.us. Okay, so we're going to go to gov. What happened to com? IT?
Commissioner Jung, if I may, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. As I understand, the .gov is really where the municipalities really need to be moving into the future. As this is something that's, yeah, it's a trust issue for scamming and some of those other sorts of things. So.
Totally. Okay, got it. I even read it backwards, so I beg your pardon. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree and support and believe that that's a great idea. And hey, it's only $400, so no quibble here. And with that being said, I move to approve the consent item.
Thank you. I have a motion, and let's open for public comment.
Second.
And I have a motion and a second, and so we'll open for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 emails from Tammy Holtstill, which she has requested I read both of them within her 3 minutes, to the extent that they can make it.
Okay.
This is on, the first email is public comment on 7B1. Hello, Commissioners. I believe this meeting is a violation of the open meeting law and believe my email will not be read in its entirety, nor will you read it. Spending $1,449,796, but not to exceed 3 years after flooding of the 2017 is extremely slow. And now, of all times, to finally decide to take action. Really? The state offers are short by over $1 point something billion. You want to spend this $149,796 for words to do nothing when residents are becoming homeless and crime is going up. How stupid are you? How stupid is your staff not to see and hear the public to save monies for health services and police? This is not the time to throw money on surveys or feasibility studies. There's no real action, just words, and no funds to follow through with the so-called study when completed. Big question, where is the DRI study? Why are you not using it? When are we going to see it? Never, because it will prove the residents fighting you have been right all along. Proof is in the pudding. Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. And this is her public comment, very similar, but on 7B2. Hello, Commissioners. I believe this meeting is a violation of the open meeting law and believe my email will not be read in its entirety, separate from 7B1, nor will you read. Fiscal and financial responsibility, spending not to exceed $107,460, 3 years after the flooding of 2017 is extremely slow. And now, of all times, to finally decide to take action, really? The state offers are short by over $1 point something billion. You want to spend this $149,796 for words to do nothing when residents are becoming homeless and crime is going up. How stupid are you? How stupid is your staff not to see and hear the public to save monies for health services and police? This is not the time to throw money on surveys and feasibility studies. There's no real action, just words, and no funds to follow through with the so-called study when completed. Big question, where is the DRI study? Why are you not using it? When are we going to see it? Never, because it will prove the residents fighting you have been right all along. Proof is in the pudding. Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do you have any other public comment
I do not, Madam Chair.
on any of the issues?
Not on any of the consent items.
Okay, is there anything on Zoom? Okay, we have a Zoom comment.
Commissioners. My name is Charles Whitaker. I'm a Reno resident and a member of Mass Liberation Nevada. This comment is in regards to the transfer of funds to the Rural Housing Organization. As laudable as that is, and as wonderful as it is to support Nevadans who need extra support to afford home ownership, especially in these troubling times, I would just want to provide some nuance and express that, considering, as the commissioner just related themselves, that the county is not going about begging for projects and the county is cash-strapped, as is the rest of the state, that spending millions of dollars on this specific entity could be seen as favoring folks who are already of a certain income bracket. $98,000 to me is not struggling. I work for a shelter, a residential facility for unhoused folks in Washoe County, and folks living there aren't even thinking about home ownership. So I really want to encourage to the county, maybe they could split that money up and not spend it solely upon residents who already have a modicum of financial means to even afford a home. I also want to say that home ownership should not be the base, what should I say? The base level when we're thinking about quality of life. There are plenty of communities and countries around the world where the ability to afford a home does not decide a person's quality of life. A county, as we were informed yesterday very disparagingly by the city of Sparks, actually has the ability does fund social services. The county also has the ability to use its lobbying resources to lobby the state of Nevada to do something about affordable housing and housing for people who don't have any. So I would really appreciate not to receive a lecture in response, because I actually know how government works. But I would actually encourage the commission to work in coalition with community organizations and community partners actually across the state who are, we mentioned the housing coalition. I don't know if there are people on that coalition who are homeless, number one, or who don't actually have homes. So that's all I have for this comment. Let's not discriminate against poor people and homeless people and lower income people solely at the benefit of people who have $98,000 at least between a pair of two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have anybody else? Okay, we will close public comment and bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Chair Lucy being absent. And with that, we will move on. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, that will take us to item number 8. Item number 8 is a recommendation to acknowledge a presentation on the current status of Lemon Valley closed hydro basins. And our county engineer, Dwayne Smith, is available for this presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith.
Good morning. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and Board. For the record, Dwayne Smith, Director of Engineering Capital Projects and your county engineer. This presentation has 3 parts and is focused on Lemon Valley. I do have an update for our continued flood response in the Lemon Valley area. And I've also got some information that's been identified regarding the current FEMA floodplain and the flood insurance rate maps in the area. And I wanted to provide you with information and receive your input on this item. And then the last element is the discussion of a policy for volumetric mitigation in Lemon Valley, a closed basin for construction associated with work that's done with inside those FEMA floodplains. So let me see if I can share my screen here. I'm assuming that you can see it. Just want to verify that.
We can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So I wanted to first reaffirm your direction to staff and touch base on these focus areas through the presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about communication that's continuing to occur between the public and with the residents. I wanted to also continue to reaffirm our protections that we have in place. I'll mention the Lemon Drive RTC capacity project, as well as the American Flat irrigation project that the city of Reno is doing. And then wanted to thank you for the long-term mitigation work as reflected in the items in the consent agenda. I just wanted to quickly go through and mention that as we continue to mitigate the continued flood activity, or through our continuation of our flood activities and mitigating those impacts, as of currently, we've spent about $10.4 million in Lemon Valley. That's a combination of general fund money as well as utility fund money. And we certainly have some pretty significant responses, and we've been very successful in those responses. I would also assure you that in the fiscal year 21 approved budget, that continued operation and maintenance funding is there within the capital improvement fund in the manager's office. This is a graph you've seen before, just to show. Oops, did we lose the PowerPoint?
Yes, we did.
Give me just a sec.
The PowerPoint is in your staff reports, everyone, and it's also online.
Can you see it now?
Not yet, Dwayne. Can you share your screen again? I think the screen share stopped.
Is that better?
Yes, we're back on slide 1. There you go. There we go.
So this, again, this graph just is a summary of the costs, and you can see where there's peaks in the graph were in response to significant precipitation events both in 2017 and 2019. So I just wanted to touch base with you on some of the current, ongoing, and upcoming field activities. There's a lot of activities that still occurs, even though, as you heard the Assistant County Manager Solero mention, we are seeing significant decreases in the lake elevation due to evaporation. We still are maintaining the barriers and the pumps and the piping. We did install barriers around the Lemon Valley Elementary School. This was done in the fall in preparation for this last winter. We've continued to work on our communication with our public through things like the storyboards and the lake cam that shows the water levels in the lake. There's been some good work done. There's a project with Reno, the city of Reno, to irrigate some Washoe County property. We brought an agreement to you in the past that's called the American Flat area, and that irrigation project has been going on for several months. And of course, we continue to do the things as we always do: roadside ditch cleaning, weed abatement, of course, the health district, and their mosquito abatement. And so I just wanted to assure you that there's a lot of activities that are still continuing to go on in alignment with our response plans. You might have also heard that just this last week, I didn't capture it in this presentation, but last week we removed the upper level of some HESCO barriers along Arkansas. This was in response to residents asking that question. It doesn't reduce, and I want to be clear, it does not reduce the protection of residents in the area. And there was some material that was left behind that's on the other side of the barriers. And as we continue to go through and make adjustments to our barrier and protection systems, ultimately all of that material would be cleaned up as part of that effort. So how did the 2019-20 winter impact Swan Lake? Well, I want to talk again about just reaffirming with you our preparedness for the winter, how that aligned with our emergency response plans, how we made sure that staffing, both internal and external, was prepared for the winter, including staging of equipment and resources, and working with our regional service providers. Well, I'd like to take credit for it, but we did not experience any significant precipitation this last winter. So we didn't see that runoff and those increases in lake levels to the same degree that we've seen in the past. As a matter of fact, right now, the lake is at its lowest level that we've seen in the last 3 years. So this is a graph you've seen before. You're probably pretty familiar with it at this point. The green is the kind of the cumulative precipitation, and the blue line is the Swan Lake elevation. So you can see the two peaks in 2017 and 2019, and then you can see the trajectory of the lake level as we go through the summer. Right now, the lake is at about 4919.7. What's important there is that it's about 3.8 feet below where we were at the high point in 2019. And so that's a pretty significant decrease in the lake. And for another comparison, we're basically 3 feet below the level at the same time last year. So in July of last year, we were basically 3 feet higher in lake elevation than we are today in this July in 2020. We're currently experiencing about 1 inch of decline in lake levels per week. Now this graph, I just want you to recognize that staff continues to develop and review data, and we're diligent in our response to the flooding in the area. So this graph, what I've done here is kind of giving you a perspective of where the lake has kind of moved in elevation over the last year. So you can see the different colors representing 2017, 2018, 2019. And at the bottom in the blue lines are where we're at here in 2020. And while I'm not making projections, I wanted to let you know that we are adjusting our field responses to where the lake is going and where we expect it to go. So just as the waters rose in 2017 and 2019, and we made adjustments, the same thing is occurring today, and we use data like this to help us make good responses and good adjustments to our continued protections of our residents. There's continues to be a concern over the HESCO barriers. I just wanted to quickly review that they've been in place since 2017, in March of 2017. There's been concerns. We continue to have third-party professional evaluate the HESCO barriers and continue to affirm that they are fit for purpose, well-constructed, and performing very well. We also continue to monitor Swan Lake water quality. This is important, not just for what the lake is doing, but as water is sent up to the American Flat area for irrigation purposes. So we do very frequent, every other week, water quality samples in different areas of the lake. And our commitment is that if there is any indications of decreasing water quality, that we will continue to work with, of course, our partners in the health department and with the state to address these issues. I will mention that as with any closed water body or other shallow lakes in our area, we do expect algae to grow as we continue to see shallower waters and warming water temperatures. So again, if we do reach a point where we need to do additional postings or notifications to our residents in the area, we will do that. And I'd also just remind everybody that we do utilize water quality samples both at our treatment plants and also in the lake, and want to confirm that all effluent that's discharged meets NDEP permit requirements. This is a picture of American Flat. If you've been driving down on the highway on 395 going north and you've looked out to the east above Swan Lake area, you'll see this big green patch out there. Well, this is where the city of Reno installed pivots to irrigate the land, the Washoe County property up there. So they're currently pulling Swan Lake water out of the lake, and in the future, that'll be a combination of water resources, including highly treated effluent. So they're averaging about 1.5 to 2 million gallons per day of water that's being pumped up there. They've done their first cutting of the alfalfa about 2 weeks ago, and so they've been making good progress up there. I wanted to recognize the RTC for a moment, and certainly there's been discussion about the Lemon Drive project. That's the project to look at raising and modifying Lemon Drive to both meet capacity needs within the area as we grow. But I want to reaffirm that part of the goals, you'll see goal number 3 and goal number 5 there, that were identified for this project to meet. And that includes mitigation of Swan Lake to assist Washoe County and the City of Reno in future maintenance costs, and to aid in long-term flood response planning for the residents out there. So I'd remind everybody that the Lemon Drive project is 2 phases. The upper phase is closer to the highway, or phase 1, and phase 2 is the phase that's within the floodplain area within Lemon Valley. And I want to again note that the RTC has been very helpful in addressing and adapting the goals of that project to help us with flood response in the future. This is just a quick project limit map that shows the phase 2 or segment 2 from Fleetwood to Chickadee. As we were going through this work with the RTC, a technical advisory committee was developed. And part of that was to utilize the strengths of the various people and agencies in the area to help identify the best alternatives to move forward, both to meet the capacity needs and also to meet the opportunity or the goals for flood response. The TAC identified through the level 1 screening process 3 alternatives for this portion, segment 2, as it passes through the Lemon Valley area. That's first alternative. Alternative 2 is to elevate existing Lemon Drive. Alternative 6 is a natural berm alignment. And alternative 8, or the third one, is the Deodore alignment. Just wanted to quickly show you what these look like. So the screen, or the image on the left, shows Lemon Drive in its existing limits within the existing right-of-way. The one in the middle is to realign Lemon Drive along the natural berm that's people are very familiar with that live out in the area. That's a little bit more toward the middle of the lake area. And then the third option, option 8, it was to look at potentially realigning Lemon Drive along Deodore and to the east. I did include the costs at the bottom. These are just estimated costs that came out of the level 1 screening option. So estimated cost for the Lemon Drive is about keeping Lemon Drive within its existing right-of-way is about $25.8 million. The alternative 2, which is to go along the soil berm, is about $45 million, and the Deodore alignment was about $55 million. Again, level 1 screening cost. The next steps that RTC is going through is to do the stakeholder outreach, and that's part of why I put this into this presentation today, was to make you aware of what's going on with this project. There is a public workshop in the late summer. They will, RTC will bring these options forward, these level 1 screening options forward, and let the public ask questions and understand what the goal is. With that public input, then we expect to go to a level 2 screening to take these 3 alternatives down to a single recommended preferred alternative in November of 2020. I did include, for the benefit of the public, if anybody has any questions, Dale Keller, he is the project manager over at RTC, and so there is his contact information. So that kind of concludes a quick update on what's going on in the Lemon Valley and Washoe County's continued flood response and some of the activities that we're doing as area service providers to support those activities. This part of the discussion I wanted to turn over to really talk about the existing FEMA floodplain that is in the Lemon Valley area and receive your feedback regarding necessary changes to the flood insurance rate maps, or FIRM maps. I wanted to let you know the preliminary findings that we've done based on some preliminary work. I wanted to go over with you the details and the next steps that I'm going to be asking for. And I wanted to recognize that there will be some impacts to some of the residents out there and impacts to public infrastructure. And I wanted to talk with you about that. And then I also wanted to get your feedback so that we can use this information as we move forward with this modifications or changes to the FEMA floodplain maps. First, I just wanted to reaffirm that, there are high-risk areas in our community where geography, elevation, water sources likely result in greater flooding activities. This is along rivers and streams and drainages or low places where water collects, and also, of course, as we've become acutely aware of, within closed hydro basins. I just wanted to reaffirm with you that where you have areas of greater risk or greater chances of flooding, those are referred to as 100-year floodplains. That's where there's a 1% or greater chance of flooding in any given year. So that's those impact areas are considered to be high risk. And of course, if your home is in a high risk area, you'll likely be required to buy flood insurance if you have a mortgage. Your mortgage lender will require that. But I also wanted to reaffirm that nearly everybody is eligible to buy flood insurance, regardless if you're in a floodplain or not. And that's because it's also recognized that all areas can flood and do flood. And in fact, about 25% of the claims that come into FEMA on any given year are for impacts and damages to areas that are outside of those high risk mapped areas. So, why did we initiate this preliminary work? And that's because we did recognize that there are problems with the existing FEMA floodplain firm map. FEMA relies on local agencies to provide the best information when there's known mapping issues or changes in flood hazard. So these maps, these flood insurance rate maps, they show us where these high risk areas are. We use these to manage our floodplains, to condition new construction and new projects that might be developed or built within those areas. And we use it for insurance rating purposes. But it's very important as we recognize impacted areas that we bring this information to FEMA, but it's just as important that we bring this information to our residents that are impacted. They need to know if they're in a high-risk area based on those issues that I mentioned before, geography, water levels, et cetera, so that they can make the best decisions as well for them. So knowing that there were problems with the existing firm maps, we initiated this preliminary work. We've used a consultant, and we've used LIDAR, our most accurate geographical mapping techniques to understand contours of the land. We've used the newest modeling techniques. We've got the best precipitation data. And of course, we've incorporated best practices which recognize impacts from warmer and wetter areas that we have. So what does this mean? Well, this is a draft. This map that I'm showing you now is a draft of what that initial or preliminary analysis has shown us. So this is again Swan Lake. You can see the orange areas are those areas that would be added potentially to the floodplain. I want to be clear that there's still some more work to be done. This is a draft, and so these lines on this map, I wouldn't consider these to be final lines whatsoever. But I do want to show you this to emphasize that there are changes in the floodplain and within that mapped risk area, and that needs to be updated. So this initial work has resulted in identifying potentially as much as a 5 to 6/10 of a foot, so about a half a foot increase in the flood pool depth. This results in a broader 100-year floodplain area, and again, it has impacts to infrastructure, but it also, and I want to be clear, has impacts to some of our residents out there. With this understanding, we need to inform the residents so that they know what those risks are. I've got some preliminary numbers. It looks like there's both about approximately 40 residents that would be brought into the floodplain area, and about 22 or so that would come out of the area. So this mapping also identified, while the extents have certainly changed, would change, that some people will be actually taken out of the floodplain while others would be put into the floodplain. For those that are put into the floodplain, this is of most importance to us. Again, we need to inform them about what their flood risk is, but we also can be of assistance to them so that we can help them through that process. Now, this is a scan off of the FEMA flood site that gives some information about what happens to residents when there's an increase in the BFE. So you'll see in the middle of the screen there's when there's high-risk areas or an increase to the BFE, there are some potential savings that residents can take advantage of if they do find that their house was built prior to an updated flood map being developed. So it's important that we go through this process to update the FEMA flood maps, the firm maps. We do need to take this information and use this not only to help explain to our residents what's going on, but this data also is important for our long-term mitigation planning for projects such as Lemon Drive, so that we know what elevation to construct roadways to, and impact and how we deal with other infrastructure costs as well. My commitment is to the community is to go out and meet with small groups of affected residents to discuss the process, discuss the findings, and be a resource for them. Ultimately, what we would do is update the flood insurance rate map and send to FEMA for their review and approval. And then part of that help to our residents would be to also provide communications to the local insurance companies regarding the grandfathering process and FEMA options. So I wanted to really share this information with you to let you know that, yes, there are some required changes in the FEMA floodplain within the Lemon Valley area. We have gone through this recently in the North Spanish Springs area in Boneyard Flat, based on better precipitation records, better contour understanding, better runoff numbers. We experienced the same thing in North Spanish Springs, and that floodplain associated with the closed basin Boneyard Flat went up, and we've gone through this process with them out there. I will not joke with you, it was difficult at times, but I think everybody understood the importance of understanding flood risk and how to manage that and work through that process. So my recommendation to you for direction to staff is to go through this process, to provide periodic updates to the board, to provide you with the outcome of the small group meetings with residents and other stakeholders in the area, let you know what FEMA's review comments are, and certainly work in harmony with our state floodplain administrator. I do have one more discussion item for you, so I don't know if we want to pause to take questions now or if I should just keep moving forward. But maybe what I'll do is keep moving forward with discussion item 2.
Yes,
So discussion.
let's just keep moving forward and we'll discuss it all at the end. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Discussion item 2 is really in harmony with the changes in the FEMA floodplain. So there's currently areas in our region where, based on circumstances, there's higher mitigation levels in place to mitigate flood and stormwater impacts. Those areas exist, for instance, along the Truckee River, where we have critical flood zone 1, where volumetric mitigation takes place. The City of Reno Community Development Department has recently increased stormwater mitigation requirements for on-site detention and retention basins from 1:1 to 1.3 to 1. And so this item is to discuss with you the same mitigation strategy for development that occurs within FEMA flood zones. So our goal is to recognize that the necessary greater levels of mitigation in response to closed basin flooding are identified and finalized through a recommended policy. We want to put that policy in place, return to the board for your authorization of that policy. We will then update the county code and then work collaboratively with the city of Reno Sparks to update the Truckee Meadows Drainage Manual. So what is volumetric mitigation? Just in short, if you have a closed basin and you add significant volumes of material, or you add volumes of material to that closed basin, that water is going to be displaced and the elevation is going to rise. So again, we see this in areas right now along the Truckee River where we've taken the lead on making sure that volumetric mitigation is in place. I believe for these closed basins, and certainly for the Swan Lake closed basin, we need to recognize that volumetric mitigation for all new development is very important. And we have to be careful how we go through the process of mitigating that volumetric impacts. So this is the kind of the language of the policy, and I won't go through and hit every single point, but I want to assure you that anytime that volume of material is brought into a FEMA floodplain within a closed basin, that for every unit of measure that comes in, a cubic yard is the typical number, that 1.3 cubic yards would be taken out. Some important things that you need to know are that wherever that material is placed inside that floodplain and that subsequent 1.3 cubic yards of material is taken out, that it has to be within the same elevation band so that we don't change floodplain storage volumes below that ultimate BFE. We also need to recognize that detention and retention basins that are required by other ordinances can't be counted as flood mitigation storage volumes. So if you go through and you're developing a project and you've got an on-site detention or retention basin, that does not count for floodplain volumetric mitigation. You can't double dip. And we also need to make sure that we recognize that groundwater is also a factor. And so if you excavate a deep excavation and that excavation fills up with groundwater or is just sitting there with stored water, that again does not count to the compensatory flood storage volume. These are some of those technical elements that are important to capture within this policy. And again, this policy, my recommendation to you is that this policy would apply to all new building projects, including the new development, even those that have prior tentative map approval but have not submitted grading permits or initiated field grading activities prior to this time. Again, the goal is to bring back the final policy as written, present it to you for your approval, and then we would also take that approval and update our development code as we go through the process, our standard processes for updating our development codes. Again, it's a little bit of a I think it's important to recognize, that the FEMA floodplains are important, that flood risk management is an obligation of the county, and we are fully prepared to go through that, finalize our initial work that is impacting the floodplains in that area, work with our community to help them through this process, and then also to bring back that policy associated with volumetric mitigation within these closed basins, within this Lemon Valley closed basin. So I just wanted to thank you for your time, and I'm available for any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We appreciate your presentation, and it was very interesting. As usual, all your volume in, volume out stuff is somewhat over my head. So, but that's why we have more than one commissioner on this board. So with that, I will turn it over to the commissioners to see if there are any questions. And I see Commissioner Herman has a question.
I hope that's on. Okay, thank you. Okay, so since most of the homes in Lemon Valley were built, all the ones affected by flooding, were built before there was any FEMA map. It was a dry play. So the FEMA maps came much later. And FEMA evidently is who does FEMA maps, and I guess that's what you're getting at, is that you want to get FEMA involved in remapping our floodplain in Lemon Valley, Swan Lake. In the process, we're kind of scaring a lot of people because it's looking like in the information that you have, so it's going to change the way the water moves, but I'm just an amateur at this too, but you have to make some changes on the land before the water is going to make a change, and the water is going to make changes that we don't plan on. But we are worrying some people that live there that have already gone through 3 years of hell. There was a DRI study that has never been brought forward for some reason. I don't understand that. I'd like to know what their study came up with. And from reading all of this, I think there's more of this geared to the future development there than there is to trying to protect the actual people that have been living there and have been paying taxes for 45 years, a lot of them, because that's how old their homes are. So I'm just listening to you as you were speaking, and I know that you're a very effective speaker and all that, but there's a lot of questions that people have about this whole thing, and that's why I was reluctant to get into this without the people that are going to be affected by it. We're going to be making more people pay for flood insurance than are paying for it now, and they can't afford it. And then you're saying that there's going to be some taken out, but is it that the FEMA maps were inaccurate to begin with, or what? Because I'm really confused. So I know I gave you a lot to answer, but there it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Commissioner Commissioner Hartung or Commissioner Jung?
Well, I do have some questions, but I think, did Mr. Smith want to answer any of Commissioner Herman's concerns?
Yes, Commissioner, and through the Vice Chair, if now is a good time, I'd like to address a couple of things to provide a little bit better context. I would start off by saying, yes, we're fully aware of the DRI, the Desert Research Institute study, which is the development of a model that you can change. The goal with it is to understand impacts of surface and groundwater and use it as a tool to change inputs to see what those impacts result in. So it's a tool that's being developed. It is not completed yet. I've been on the telephone with the primary researcher within the last couple of weeks, and we speak frequently. So as soon as that tool is completed, what I would expect to do is ask to bring them and have them make a presentation to you so that you can understand more detail about that tool and what we expect to be able to use it for. The second thing I would mention is yes, I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Herman, because these are technical issues. But the thing that I would say is that first of all, flood risks do change over time. So you've got changing weather patterns, you've got changing land use, you've got changing water precipitation events. We're seeing warmer winters and more runoff occurring in the wintertime. So, you know, these are all things that impact the volume of water that goes down lakes or excuse me, goes down streams or rivers, or in this case, impacts closed basins. It's important to recognize that the flood plain is the flood plain, and the mapping needs to actually reflect what that risk is. And so our effort is really focused on the residents, and my commitment to you and my commitment to the residents is to meet with those affected folks. Once we know who's affected through this effort, then there's some additional steps in there. For instance, that floodplain may show that a house is in that floodplain, but that house may actually be elevated above that flood pool elevation. We see that in a lot of areas. So just because this map initially recognizes, and again, it's a draft, that there's going to be changes to the floodplain, and it might, somebody that lives out there might say, hey, my house looks like it's in that orange area. That doesn't necessarily mean that their house is actually within that elevation in that floodplain. So again, there's more work to be done. But what I want to do, and with your affirmation, is do that work and then meet with that resident to have a discussion. Because you're absolutely right. A lot of the houses were built before the flood insurance rate maps were developed, and FEMA recognizes that. And FEMA's got some abilities to help mitigate those impacts to flood insurance costs. And I put that back up on the screen here. So there are some grandfathered savings, and I'd love to be able to go through and work with our residents to help them maximize their savings opportunities. And then I'm also committed to working with the insurance companies, making sure that they have information that will help them in getting the best possible rates if there is a flood insurance rate that needs to be applied. I hope that helps a little bit more.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Commissioner Herman, any further questions? Okay. All right, Commissioner Hartung, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Smith, I'm going to take you back to your slide 11 to start with, the American Flat Irrigation Project. So you said 2 million gallons a day are going up to American Flat right now. Is that, did I hear that number correctly, or was that a?
No, that's my understanding, is that they're pumping about 1.5 to 2 million gallons per day on average.
Okay, so that's about 6 acre feet a day that's going up there, and they're growing alfalfa. Is that what you said?
That's correct.
And so is it a resident farmer project, or I mean, who's utilizing that alfalfa? Do we know?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm happy to get that information for you. I do know that the city of Reno entered into an agreement to have that alfalfa cut. I don't know the outcome of where that alfalfa goes, but again, I'll find out for you. Okay, no, and because, you know, I mean, I'd love to see it go out to the horse ranch that we have for the wild horse ranch on Winnemucca Ranch as you know, feeding those animals. I think that's a great opportunity. I know that there's cost in cutting and you know, planting and all of that, but I think that those can be offset in an amicable way. And we did, from Washoe County, we did pay for a portion of that pipe. Am I correct? Washoe County provided the land, and we're doing water quality sampling up at the American Flat, but we did not pay for any of the pump or pipe. Okay, my bad. All right. Yeah, if you could get back to me on that, that would be wonderful. And then with respect to the Lemon Valley Drive widening and elevation project, I've gone on record at the RTC with this.
and I'll say it here, taking it to Chickadee is of little to no value. We need to get that, Mr. Smith, all the way to Ramsey. Yes, that's the correct slide. I don't see a slide number on my but that's good. So we need to get that all the way to Ramsey. I love the berm idea, but regardless of what we do, we're still going to need to do some berms at the north and the south end of the lake. If we much like 395 is elevated through Washoe Valley and really does hold the lake back, utilizing it as I'll dare to say a levee. I like that idea, but we've got to get it all the way up to Ramsey. We have to. It's not just going to act as a berm or a levee, but it's also going to provide access to the backside of the valley for those residents. And I think that this is a crucial project. I think it's a great project. I'm not really supportive of the Deodar alignment, but either one of the two alignments of Lemon Valley Drive or the berm would certainly be my preference. And then figure out the land that's left over and how we would utilize that and basically control the lake level through that sort of excess storage. So I'm looking forward to seeing what staff comes up with. And I'm hoping that you'll support that, getting it all the way to Ramsey also. When Mr. Gibson was still the executive director of RTC, I made it clear that Chickadee was not far enough, and so I'll have those conversations again with Mr. Thomas and make sure that staff knows sort of what my feelings are on that. And no comment necessary by you. At this, not overall, I'm just talking about at this time. And then if you could go to slide 25, I'd like to understand the 1.3 units of volume out. So does that go to our policy of, it used to be 1-to-1. You could not allow more than, if a gallon of water flowed off your property prior to development, more than a gallon of water could not flow off your property after development. Is that what this is talking about? This volume in, volume out?
Commissioner, what you're talking about is the pre-development and the post-development stormwater flows off the parcel. And I apologize again. This is a bit confusing. That policy is still in our development code and is not changing. What this policy is trying to accomplish is to recognize that any new development, any new projects that are constructed or built within a FEMA floodplain, which they can be, there is no rule or requirement that says that you cannot develop inside of a FEMA floodplain. But the critical thing is that if you do develop within that FEMA designated floodplain, that you have to mitigate your impacts. And mitigating those impacts is more than just, saying, hey, I'm going to use my stormwater detention basin over here to address those things that you just identified that are still in place, the post-development flows and pre-development flows. This policy is in harmony with that. It doesn't replace that. It's in addition to that policy that's already in place to mitigate those impacts from adding more material into a FEMA floodplain and not taking material in a sufficient volume out of a floodplain. And then there's some of those additional technical details there. So it works in combination with what you're talking about. So
if we were to, and this is something we did up on the listener's property with Lifestyle Homes. It's actually not Lifestyle. It was the Silver Hills development. They agreed to do a 1.5, correct?
They agreed to a higher level of volumetric mitigation associated with stormwater, yes.
Right. So I like the number of 1.5, and I'm wondering if we can, and I know that there's going to be some pushback from the developmental community, but at the end of the day, I think we've got to start looking at this regionally. and how we mitigate some of the upcoming events and anything that would happen with respect to future development. And so I'm wondering what it would take. Your first bullet point of 1 unit of volume in, 1.3 out. What would it take to get it to 1.5?
My opinion on that, my professional opinion on that, is that we have to find the balance between mitigating the real impacts and not overburden any new or single project to try to resolve the problem. And we recognize that there's challenges associated with these closed basins that really need some help. And the development community has told me and has committed to being a participant in that mitigation strategy. So they may not fully agree, but they have committed to me in discussions to adhere to this type of policy that I'm trying to put into place here. I'm more than happy to have those conversations regarding differences with 1.3 or 1.5. I did choose 1.3 as the basis for this policy because it's also in alignment with what the city of Reno has done for stormwater volumetric mitigation, which is also 1.3 to 1. So I was seeking consistency through this process as well. But again, I'm happy to have those discussions and report back to you on that.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Jung, did you have any questions?
I do, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you. The first thing that comes to mind, Mr. Smith, by the way, this is an excellent presentation. I learned and was reinforced with a lot more, is that you are bringing to us specifics to the Lemon Valley disaster and generating for us your recommendations, which should become countywide policy, which I think is excellent. This is how we collect data and react to data. So thank you for that. One of the first things I would say, since they have become our test case and our area to collect data from, since we have spent as much as we have spent there, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. If we're able now to create countywide policy to avoid this in the future, that's better for everyone. Could we do a outreach and a statistically significant survey, private, et cetera, to my standards and should be to any researcher's standards, and a survey in which the way people like to get them too, so not just online, not just a telephone call, it has to be multimodal. Can we find out from the citizens in Lemon Valley exactly how they would like to be communicated, what they need to know, and throw in a couple other things? Let's pay for it, do this correctly so we can do data collection and not have to we can then take this investment we've made because of the emergency and the disaster that was declared by the governor. Let's spend it to do it to tighten this up so that we know what exactly citizens need, want, and desire, rather than relying on, what we can basically glean from it, including for the commissioner that's in this district, but it's not really for her. While it will help her, of course, to get her citizens exactly what they need, it's going to be extrapolatory data then that we can apply countywide, because this is going to be an issue we believe, and you believe, and the National Weather Service believes, and the federal government believes, something that is going to persist across this region and many regions in the future. So that's my number one request, starting from the beginning of I'm going to take this exactly chronologically. We need to do some better communication in terms of finding out exactly what they need. Please talk to me about that, because I know what I'm talking about, and I'm getting rambly, so I'm sorry. Number two, you talked about monitoring the water quality both in Swan Lake and then being pumped to American Flat. I need to know, and the citizens need to know, what would that look like? So what's the timing? Who do you share the data with? I know you check it once a week. Let's say you get a bad read. Do we pull the alarm and send it. So I want to know what the law is around that, and also what is our policy. If there's not a policy, please bring it back so we can again use this countywide in the time of inevitable emergencies and disasters, because those are not created, you know. Let me say it this way: an emergency is not planned. So then, number 3 for you is the RTC presentation. When is this supposed to be done?
Commissioner, the project, we don't have a understanding of when the actual kickoff would be for the field work, but we are committed to coming up with a recommended solution by the end of the year. The next steps then would be to go through the design and then the funding process. But I will tell you that RTC has made this a priority project, so it's not lagging.
Can you get me? I know you're not presenting for RTC, and I appreciate, however, how important this is informational, specifically to the people whom this has happened to. But I really want to find out from you, when is the completion date? How much is it going to cost? And who checks off to make sure they're meeting all of the goals in which the county provided to? If you could get that back to all of us, probably would help everybody to understand that as well, and ask RTC. I would really appreciate that. I have a further question that's kind of interesting, and it also applies countywide, and that is, can we identify people who are living in Washoe County who are both not carrying a mortgage plus living in a FEMA floodplain? And if so, if how, what can we do to give them assistance in the inevitability? That's why you buy insurance or not, you're gambling, right? In the inevitability that they will be affected and we will have to draw up our resources and help them. I would like to have a policy. I'd like to have a further discussion about that, because I see that more in the future and not less. And especially because this is a retirement magnet. People pay cash for their homes here, dude. They really do, especially coming from the West. And I just wonder what kind of gamble people are taking, and that we should be preparing for said gamble if that is going on. This is capitalism, and people, you know, are going to do what they can do to get by, and that's also humanity. Finally, I agree with Commissioner Hartung. I want a full report, too, on the alfalfa. I think that's a neat story. I didn't support that project, not because I didn't love it and the idea. I just didn't think the city should be going in agreement with the airport on some land that in 5 years they're probably going to charge them for. But I would like to know who's doing it. What are they, what is the story behind this? Because it's a cool story, and it also is, and by the way, I want to correct the record too, Mr. Smith. We gave them we let them use some of our land, but a lot of that is airport land that they couldn't give them more than really 2-year agreement to. So, which is none of my business. I'm not at the airport and I'm not at the city council, but I am a Reno City taxpayer, so that's why I had the heartburn with that. But I would like to see that too, and just hear the story of it, because I think it's cool. And if we have any say or diversion, I would love it if we are using the Nevada-grown Swan Lake sprinkled and to our wild horses to feed them. Talk about a story right there. I mean, that's beautiful. So, good report. You helped me a lot, reinforcing a lot of this data that I'm trying, and I look forward to, and I encourage you to agendize, and I will ask for that formally right now, the DRI report when their research is over, and to give us a full update. I think that would be interesting for everyone. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Any other questions? Mr. Smith, anything you want to add?
Well, I would just appreciate your time, and I would just quickly say to Commissioner Jung, thank you for the discussion on the communication with the residents, because again, that is our focus, and we really do, as good as we do, I think there's always opportunities to increase and help with that communication. And certainly on the water quality pieces, the alfalfa and the RTC pieces will definitely come back, including agendizing the DRI report. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Smith. Seeing no other comments from any other commissioners, I will turn it over to the Madam Clerk for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two emails. The first is from Tammy Holtstill. Hello again, Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. For the record, I believe this meeting with this item is a violation of the open meeting law and don't believe it will be completely read aloud or by the commissioners. Discussion 1, FEMA floodplain. There are several reasons you are wanting to change the floodplain. This way, your lack of response to the residents in the floodplain will be greater than in 2017. 2, put the responsibility on residents financially and physically for the problem created by Washoe County and the City of Reno for overdeveloping a closed basin. 3, you've been repeatedly notified and verified that FEMA flood insurance does not cover dirt differential or soil movement due to the type of soil in this basin which is saturated by flooding. Does it matter to you at all? I don't think so. Number 4, let's not forget there was a presidential declaration for FEMA which based on FEMA's regulations development in those floodplains after that declaration usually are not approved. Discussion 2, volumetric changes. Number 1, yes, a change is needed, but there are several issues with additional development with these changes. A, Washoe County regulations require a 7-day release. B, during September to March are high volume months of precipitation, only holding stormwater for 7 days, then releasing all at the same time, creates a surge or inflow to Swan Lake, creating a flood on its own because cold air has minimal evaporation to balance the inflow. C, Class C effluent mixed with Class A effluent irrigation is non-existent during winter months. D, percolation in the same closed basin means the water table is elevated and Swan Lake will remain high. Number 2, allowing development in the floodplain means not only volumetric storage for the actual development, but more floodplain for the original floodplain pulled out for development. Example, warehouses between Lemon Drive and Military. Also, new homes at Pan America, all in the alluvial fan, floodplain, which feeds Swan Lake. Overdevelopment around Swan Lake, the amount of impervious surface greatly reduces natural percolation and forces runoff to Swan Lake, which has not increased in volumetric size. Number 4, models for volumetric offsets have proven unreliable and are for river waters, not a closed basin. Discussion 3, RTC Lemon Drive. Number 1, all 3 options do not include from water ash to Oregon. Number 2 is being addressed for Prado projects, north and south, North Valley investments only, not for any other reason. 3, there was water across Idaho, also not just at Arkansas. Number 4, all of Lemon Drive is in the floodplain. And number 5, all of Lemon Drive's integrity has been undermined due to past flooding. That's the end of Ms. Holtstill's 3 minutes. She's got about another paragraph of comments.
Go ahead and do them.
Okay. She goes on to say each and every resident is a stakeholder, not just the developers. Because of COVID, as an excuse, public workshops will be none, which you will never take any information from so-called workshops anyway. Public workshops are for telling residents your decision and what you're going to do. Again, Swan Lake's volumetric size has been reduced, but fluids to Swan Lake that increase more from more stormwater and additional effluent discharge. Utilize the size of Swan Lake changes to absorb the current flows. Development must stop. Thank you, Tammy Holtstill. And I have another public commenter, Holly Lenz. Ms. Lenz, I believe it, I can double check real quickly, it looks like she's copied Ms. Holtstill's email, but I'll read the, I will read her introduction and then put her comments on the record rather than read the whole thing.
Thank you.
This is from, again, Holly Lenz. I am writing in opposition to making decisions regarding the FEMA floodplain during a time when we, the public, are unable to attend meetings. This is a community issue and the community should be allowed to give input. If the floodplain is to be adjusted, it should be based on recent flooding, be increased, not decreased. Tammy Holtstill wrote the following, and I agree with her. And then she goes on to paste in Ms. Holtstill's email. And both these emails will be placed on the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any other public comment? Do we have anything on Zoom? Okay, we have no other public comment. We'll bring it back to the board. And there is a possible motion available if any of the commissioners are interested in further comments or making a motion. I'm waiting for that.
Madam Chair, I think we've given staff enough direction. I don't know whether we genuinely need a motion at this time. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Okay.
Acknowledge the presentation, make a motion to acknowledge the presentation on the short and long-term strategies. Start working with FEMA, develop a policy absolutely countywide, and that is to include your volumetric mitigation that you said is fair and balanced for the entire county. Do you need anything else, Mr. Smith?
No, I thank you, and I've got clear direction.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion with clear direction to staff. We need a second. For purposes of this meeting, I'll second it. We've given clear direction. Let's, all those in favor of the motion giving the direction to staff signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, please affirm. We have 3 ayes and 1 nay. Commissioner Herman is voting no, and Chair Lucy is absent. So with that, the motion carries, and we will move on. I believe we have a block vote. Commissioner Hartung, are you prepared to give us a block vote?
I can, Madam Chair. I'll add a couple things into the block vote, but I just have a couple of questions for staff. So
Okay.
I would propose that we put item 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And I have questions on just some clarification on item 14 and then some clarification on item 15.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second for a block vote?
Madam Chairwoman, I'll second it, but I have something to say about item 10.
Okay, let's have the manager read them, and then we will take questions and concerns from the commissioners. Mr. Manager.
All right, Madam Chair. Item number 9 is a recommendation to approve fiscal year 2020-2021 a payment of $248,164 as Washoe County share in annual funding for the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency, TMRPA, pursuant to NRS 278.0264, Item 7, and an adopted interlocal agreement. The total amount will be paid to TMRPA in quarterly installments and will be with the first occurring on July 1st, 2020. Item number 10 is a recommendation to approve Resolution R20-046, providing for the transfer of Washoe County's share of local government's 2020 private activity bond volume cap, in an amount of $5,822,655.34 to the Nevada Rural Housing Authority for support of the organization's affordable housing programs and other matters related thereto. Item number 11 is a recommendation to accept a Victim of Crime Act, VOCA, grant to the District Attorney's Office in the amount of $627,000 with a $156,750 required match from the State of Nevada Department of Health and Human Services Division of Children and Family Services to provide funding to retain a full-time victim witness advocate and 2 intermittent hourly victim witness advocates, retain an intermittent hourly forensic interviewer, and create a second intermittent hourly forensic interviewer and a full-time forensic interviewer for the Child Advocacy Center, create a full-time human services support specialist 2 for the CAC, as evaluated by the Job Evaluation Committee, provide for counseling services at the CAC, fund related travel and training equipment, and direct victim services and supplies, retroactive from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, and direct human resources to create the necessary positions and direct the comptroller to make the necessary budget adjustments, and retroactively authorize the district attorney or his designee to sign the grant agreement. Item number 12 is a recommendation to accept fiscal year 21 Victims of Crime Act, VOCA, innovative sub-grant award from the State of Nevada Division of Child and Family Services to support homeless services in the amount of $130,000 with a $32,500 county match, retroactive for the period of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Authorize the Director of Human Services Agency to execute the sub-grant and related documents and direct the Comptroller's Office to make the necessary budget amendments. Item number 13 is a recommendation to accept Community Correction Partnership Block Grant from the Department of Health and Human Services Juvenile Justice Programs Office in the amount of $317,163.53 to provide treatment and programming to youth referred to the Washoe County Department of Juvenile Services for the retroactive period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. No match required, and if approved, direct the Comptroller's Office to make the necessary budget adjustments. Item number 14 is a discussion and possible action on the county manager's recommended capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2021 through 2025, and direct the county manager to submit the CIP to the state of Nevada and others by August 1st, 2020. And item number 15 is to accept the resignation due to retirement of Craig Betts, Chief Information Officer, effective July 10th, 2020, accepting county manager's recommendation and appoint Information Technology Manager Quinn Korbulik to the position of Acting Chief Information Officer and approve a salary adjustment of 10% effective July 14th, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And we will go first to Commissioner Jung and her question on item 10.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just wanted to, we voted on something before we got a chance to discuss. That's why public comment obviously is so much better to be taken before we make a motion, and that's my bad. I apologize to you, Madam Chairwoman. I agree wholeheartedly with the man who called in or videoed in. I believe housing to be a civil right. And probably one of our last civil rights were really, the right to die, I would also say, or that is something we're going to have to fight for as a nation and certainly as a community. And I definitely do not discriminate on housing choices. I think most young people today won't buy a house in the future because they can live anywhere and don't like to be at the same place like us old people do. So, and I love that I get to say that now, Mr. Hartung. So this is not in any way a reflection of my values or I believe the Board of County Commissioners' values, who spend the largest portion of the two urban cities in providing services to humanity, and especially the most vulnerable, and as well as animal services and all other vulnerable services that we can do. So I agree with him, but I still support this because I believe that in not discriminating against housing, I think everybody should have the right to choose the shelter in which they would like to live in, and that is a basic civil right. So that's what I want to say. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. And Commissioner Hartung, before I turn it over to you, just since I also have a curious question on this issue, and understand I have absolutely no problem with this money being turned over to the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, but I am curious, why haven't we considered using some of these funds for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund here in Washoe County that we have set up, but we have not funded? Mr. Manager?
Madam Chair, Dave Solero. These aren't actually transitioning of funds. This is the ability to utilize our bond cap that's assessed from the state. So we're not actually transferring any money. We're allowing the Nevada Housing Authority to be able to utilize the ability to bond against that piece from the state. So no money changing hands here. And so, therefore we can't take any money and put it into the trust fund unless we bond for that money and put it in there.
Makes perfect sense, but I thought we should get that on the record. Thank you very much. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And item number 14, Mr. Solero, on the CIP, just very quickly, I know we've had conversations about this, but I want to put this on the record. It's page 3 of 5 in the staff report. The Regional Emergency Operations Roof Restoration and the Regional Public Safety Training Center roof restoration. I see those numbers in our budget, but how does that work back? Because that's actually, it's bonded, but it's also owned by all three entities.
Commissioner, thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Dave Solero. You're absolutely right. Those are two items that are also funded through other agencies. And so in this instance, the two roofs, one at the Emergency Operations Center and one at the Public Safety and Training Center, the piece that's listed here in this is just Washoe County's portion of those roof replacements. The other entities also supply funding, and they've already approved those monies to be put towards these projects. So it is based on the interlocal agreements and the share for each entity for both of those items.
And one other question. The Regional Animal Services roof restoration, that comes out of their bucket of money, does it not? Or does Washoe County fund that?
No, Commissioner, that is indeed funded through the Animal Services portion of their budget.
Great. I just wanted to put those things on the record. And I know that there's some park stuff that I believe is also funded through the parks funds as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's a portion of this that is specific to parks, and it includes the residential construction tax as well as grant funding available.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have on item 14. If anyone else has questions on that item, I'll wait for item 15.
So I don't see any other questions, so go ahead on 15, Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For staff, and I don't know who's online with this, are we going out to look for a new chief information officer? And it's not that I don't think Mr. Korbulik is perfectly suited. He's a extremely intelligent fellow, and he's greatly suited for this. But I'm just wondering, are we going to do a search for a new chief information officer?
For the Commissioner, again, for the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. Commissioner, yes, this is styled to do an open competitive recruitment process for the Chief Information Officer.
And I just wanted to get that on the record. So those are all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you. Block vote stands.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Do we have any?
I have something I'd like to put on the record for item 15.
Absolutely. Go right ahead, Commissioner Jung.
I believe that competition only makes you better. Everybody can apply for the open national search, but Washoe County citizens hired us to make sure that we get the best we can get with their money. So I want to put on the record, I do believe a national search is only in the best interest of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Good point. Glad you put it on the record. Do we have any public comment on any of these issues, Madam Clerk?
No, we did not.
Do we have anybody on Zoom? Okay, we have no public comment, so we will bring this back to the board. And
Madam Chair, one more thing, and I'm remiss for not saying something, and that is I just want to thank Craig Betts. I don't know whether he'll be coming before us at any time in the future, but he's truly been amazing, and he's taken us a long way, bringing us truly into the 21st century with many great advances that have protected the county's, so one of the county's greatest assets, which is our data. And so I'd like to just thank him for all of his hard work.
thank you, Commissioner Hartung, and I hope Mr. Betts will accept that, your comments on behalf of the full commission, because we certainly, I know, have all really appreciated the work that he's done for us. With that being said, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the block vote, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Chair Lucy being absent. And with that, I believe we've pulled 15 or 16.
Correct.
So we have pulled 16, so we will move on to our first public hearing, which is item 17. Mr. Manager.
All right, Madam Chair. Item number 17 is the first public hearing of the day for a second reading and possible adoption of an ordinance amending Washoe County Code Chapter 70, and I will turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you. This, excuse me, I've got my papers in the wrong order. This, if adopted, will bear ordinance number 1654, an ordinance amending Washoe County Code Chapter 70, Vehicles and Traffic, by adding a definition for non-commissioned deputy, by updating the Traffic Control Committee to replace references to the Director of Public Works with the Director of the Community Services Department, and by amending a provision related to the categories of personnel who may issue citations for illegally parked vehicles. This was previously issued Bill number 1844.
Okay. Does any, commissioners, do any of you need a presentation from staff? Hearing none, I am looking, do we have any public comment on this issue, Madam Clerk?
We have one person on Zoom, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Judith Miller, you've been unmuted on Zoom. We're not hearing you.
Ms. Miller, can you hear us?
I show her, Madam Chair, as still being muted on my list of participants. I'm sorry to interrupt.
She has to unmute herself. Chair, Commissioner, I've enabled her to unmute herself.
Ms. Miller, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Let's try that again.
There you are.
Are we live?
There you are.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing this proposal allowing non-commissioned deputies to issue citations for parking violations. The measure will hopefully allow the Sheriff's Office to focus more on safety issues like unenforced speed limits. It might have avoided the non-fatal but still horrific accident on June 30th, just 2 doors down from me. An unlicensed 17-year-old driver plowed into the home of a 90-year-old woman. The damage was such that my neighbor's home that she and her husband built more than 40 years ago was condemned. But she's a feisty lady, a mountain woman, and hopefully she'll be able to return home once the repairs can be made and power can be safely restored. Thank you for considering this proposal, and I do look forward to a more concentrated effort to enforce speed limits in our communities as a result of this change.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. We appreciate you coming and talking with us. Do we have any other comments? Any other public comments?
No, and no emails, Madam Chair.
Okay, no emails, no public comments. Thank you very much. We will bring it back to the board. I am looking for a motion to introduce this ordinance.
This is the second reading to adopt ordinance number 1654.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so I would move to adopt ordinance 1654 as listed in the staff report under the second reading.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 4-0 with Chair Lucy being absent. And we will move on to item 18. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, item 18 is also a public hearing, second reading and adoption of an ordinance, so I will turn this one as well over to the clerk.
Thank you. If adopted, this will bear ordinance number 1655, an ordinance pursuant to Nevada Revised Statutes 278.0201 through 278.0207, adopting a development agreement between 1 Washoe County and 2 Regal Holdings of Nevada, LLC, and Charles L. Fornaro et al. For Highland Village, limiting the gross density to 4.2 dwelling units per acre on the portions of the property APNs 508-020-41 and 508-020-43, zoned high-density suburban. The term of this agreement is 10 years. The project is located north of Highland Ranch Parkway and north of Midnight Drive. The project encompasses a total of 2 parcels that total approximately 54.4 acres. The parcels are located within the Sun Valley Area Plan. The property is located within the Sun Valley Citizens Advisory Board boundaries and within Washoe County Commission District Number 5. APNs 508-020-41 and 43, and this was previously issued bill number 1842.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Commissioners, does anybody need a presentation?
Just a question, Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you. Mr. Solero, or I don't know who else is online that would be representing this. The 10-year timeline, if the applicant does not build within the 10-year timeline, does it revert back to the previous zoning?
Mr. Chair, this is Dave Solero. I'm looking to see if Julie Olander is available on Zoom. I think Julie would be best to answer.
Yeah, Julie Olander for the record of planning and building. Yes, it would revert back to the high density, which is 7 units per acre. So that zoning is in place. You already approved that. The understanding is they are moving forward. They would move forward in the next 10 years.
But if they, okay, I'm a little confused. I thought that this would live with the property. Okay. All right.
It just typically we haven't had, they're 10 to 15 years is the norm on a development agreement. I think you've seen development agreements come back in and be like Sierra Reflections. We had to renew that development agreement because it had expired. So that is more the norm as you see them come back in and get renewed.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. So any other questions? You're welcome, Commissioner Hartung. Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, I see we have one public comment. Madam Clerk.
We do, Madam Chair. It's an email from Judy Jensen. I again want to voice my objections to the zoning change for this development. Traffic is already unbearable and unsafe as people cut through from Pyramid to 395. They speed through residential streets, endangering people, pets, and property. RTC shows no plans to make Highland Ranch Parkway or Sun Valley Boulevard through to 7th Street a 2-lane road. The additional 5 Ridges development pending at Pyramid and Highland Ranch Parkway is also going to add to the problems. That development has other problems, especially the fact that there is only one access road for owners/tenants, and that is right off Highland Ranch Parkway, but that's another letter. In addition to the traffic problem, I'm concerned that the term of only for 10 years, does that mean after 10 years they can return and ask to be rezoned for even more homes per acre, and we have to go through this again? Please vote against this zoning change. Judy Jensen, Sun Valley, Nevada.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other public comment?
I have none.
Is there anything on Zoom? Okay, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. And commissioners, I'm looking for a motion, or actually, yes, a motion to adopt.
This is Commissioner Herman's district, Madam Chair.
Yes, it is. I think it's on page 3. Oops, no, I'm looking at the wrong one. It's on page 2, I think.
Thank you. So, caught me off guard. I moved to adopt ordinance number, and I can't remember the number, 1655, as is provided by the county clerk. Pursuant to Nevada Revised Statutes 278.0201 through 278.0207, adopting development agreement for Charles J. Fornaro et al., limiting the gross density to 4.2 dwelling units per acre. The approval is based on the board's ability to make all the findings required by the WCC section 110.814.30 parentheses D findings, and further to authorize the chair to execute the final development agreement upon adoption of the ordinance.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So with that, we will move on to item 19, Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, item number 19 is an introduction and first reading of an ordinance approving a development agreement between Washoe County and Ridges Development, Inc., Ridges at Hunter Creek 3 LLC, for the purpose of extending the deadline for filing a first in a series of final subdivision maps to July 5th, 2022. And I will turn this over to the clerk.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This will bear Bill number 1845, an ordinance approving a development agreement between Washoe County and Ridges Development. Oh, this is wrong. Yes. Ridges Development at Hunter Creek 3 LLC regarding the tentative subdivision map case number TM16-005 Ridges at Hunter Creek, which approved on July 5th, 2016, development of a 53-lot, single-family residential common open space subdivision. Lots range in size from plus or minus 0.37 acres, plus or minus 16,117 square feet, to plus or minus 2.3 acres, plus or minus 100,188 square feet. This agreement extends the deadline for filing the first in a series of final subdivision maps from July 5th, 2020 to July 5th, 2022. The subject site is located south of Woodchuck Circle and Hunters Peak Road and west of Hawken Drive. The subject site consists of 4 parcels totaling plus or minus 155.01 acres in size. The master plan designations include suburban residential, SR, rural residential, RR, and rural, R. The regulatory zones include general rural, JR, GR, low-density suburban, LDS, and high-density rural, HDR. The parcel is located within the Southwest Truckee Meadows Area Plan and is situated in portions of sections 19 and 30, townships 19 North, range 19 East, MDM, Washoe County, Nevada, APNs 041-650-07, 041-650-03, 041-671-02, and 041-662-12. We just need an introduction on this one, Madam Chair.
And the bill number was again, I'm sorry?
The bill number was 1845.
Okay, this is in my district, so I will introduce Bill 1845 and set the second reading and possible adoption for the August 18th, 2020 meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
We don't see any public comment on that item.
Okay,
either.
and we have no public comment, so we will close public comment, bring it back, and with that, we will move to item 20. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, that takes us to item number 20, and as I alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, the applicant has actually requested that this be continued to the July 21st meeting so that the commissioner whose district this resides in can be present. As I understand, we need to open the public hearing because of the way this was noticed and hear public comment today, if it is the wish of the commission to extend this to the 21st.
Thank you very much. We will open the public hearing on this so that we do have some public comment, and I will turn it over to Madam Clerk to address the public comment issue. Oh, Mr. Manager.
Sorry, I do have one other item. I believe we've got the applicant on Zoom so that he can actually put this request on the record as well, besides what I just have in writing. Is Mr. Raley available?
Okay, would the applicant, who's on for the applicant?
Should be Mike Raley.
Mr. Raley, would you like to make a comment?
Good afternoon. For the record, Mike Raley with Christie Corporation representing Reno Christian Fellowship. I would just like to reaffirm Assistant County Manager Solaro's statement that we are requesting a continuance to your next meeting in order to allow Commissioner Lucy to be present since it is within his district.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will turn this back to the Madam Clerk for any public comment. I do see that we have one person on Zoom.
We do, Madam Chair. Cheryl Jordan.
Ms. Jordan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm, due to the fact that you are continuing it to the next meeting, is this an appropriate time to make public comments in regards to this appeal?
Certainly. Go right ahead.
Okay, I would like to voice my opposition to this proposed zoning change. My husband and I are homeowners for over 20 years at this address on West Tacoma Road. We border the property directly to the north. At the Citizens Advisory Board meeting, we were present at that meeting where this zone proposal was denied. We were also in attendance at the Washoe County Planning Commission meeting where this zoning change was unanimously denied. So this proposal has been denied 2 times. I believe over 100 emails have been sent in opposition to this proposed zoning change and received by Julie Olander, the planner. As far as compatibility, which is the issue that they're raising as far as proposing this zoning change, their full argument is based on lot sizes that are of the same size. However, our lot size is 27,000 square feet, and all of our neighbors have lots of similar size or larger, which does not even come close to what they're proposing of 9,000 to 11,000 square foot lots with 3 homes per acre. So we are refuting the compatibility issue. The other thing that others have mentioned is property values decreasing based on smaller lot sizes. It would negatively impact our property values. We are also refuting the spot zoning claim. If you look at the surrounding area to put medium density housing in that little area, then yes, it does look like spot zoning. It is completely surrounded again by homes of much larger lot sizes. The access to this area is also of concern. It's off a roundabout, the beginning of the development. Additionally, they've talked about views. Again, we bought with homeowner CC&Rs in place that allowed 1-story homes only in order to preserve and protect these views. And that's what we're looking to do. And that goes along with preserving our property values as well. So again, we strongly oppose this regulatory zoning change. We strongly refute the compatibility issue, and it is not consistent with surrounding lot sizes on the north, on the south, or properties on the west. And we appreciate that you listen to this and recognize our valid arguments that were also recognized at both the Citizens Advisory Board and by the Washoe Planning Commission. We appreciate that it's recognized and valued for the concerns that both of those entities had voiced in previous meetings.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank you very much. I see we have an additional person on Zoom.
Adam Auerbach.
Yes, hello, Commission. My name is Adam Auerbach. I have also attended the 2 previous meetings where the Commission has voted to deny the zoning change. And apparently this is an appeal from what I've been reading here in the notice of public hearing. It doesn't, as far as I can tell, specifically state exactly what they are appealing. Can you please refresh my memory exactly what they are appealing?
Thank you, Mr.
I'm a
Auerbach.
little bit better prepared.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, could you answer Mr. Auerbach's question, please?
Yes, Mr. Auerbach, the appeal is, they're appealing the decision of the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission denied this application. They're appealing that decision to the Board of County Commissioners.
Based on what specifically?
That information is included in the staff report.
Where's legal on this? Hello, Dave Watchfield?
Yeah, technically, we don't answer questions during public comment or get into feedback during public comment. So I think we should just move on and tell you, please pull the staff report. It's online. And let's move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other public comment?
I'd like to address something.
Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
There is advice of counsel that the board and should not respond directly back to the public. It's not in and of itself a violation of the open meeting law. It just potentially can be. So that's where it comes from, and that's actually on the introduction to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Watsvial. Sorry, my fault. I should not have allowed that to happen. So let's move on for any other public comment. Madam Clerk.
We did receive 22 emails in opposition to this item. They were from Dr. K.A. Capriel, Kathy Stamenson, Carol Vetter, Nick and Sharon FACQUE, I'm not sure how you say that, Hal Craddock, Steve Erger, Anne Marie Craddock, Michael Black, Christine Young, Edward Martinez, Leo Legoburo, Linda Erger, Pam Bryan, Kathy Holoman, Christine and Ralph Bear Uther, John Falstich, Clay and Francis Mahoney, Gerald Lent, Ellen Shaw, Kathy Clement, and Jeffrey Lawrence and Mike Jordan.
Thank you very much.
And those will all be placed on the record of today's meeting.
Okay, thank you. And so there is no other public comment?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, we will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Hartung, yes.
For legal, Mr. Watsvial, do we need a motion of continuance, or just does it suffice that the applicant asked for that?
You do not need a motion. You can continue it. The chair can continue it.
Thank you.
Oh, Madam Chair, someone raised their hand right when you said you were bringing it back to the board on
Okay.
Zoom. If we can maybe go back. This
Yes.
is,
We're reopening public comment because someone raised their hand on Zoom just as I was closing public comment, so.
Dr. Gerald Lind.
Dr. Lent, are you on? Can you hear us?
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
If this is going to be extended, I'd prefer to do my comments when the hearing gets extended instead of now, if it's going to be extended.
Okay, that would be fine because we are moving it to the next meeting, which is July
21st.
21st. So it will be on the July 21st so that your commissioner can be back.
Well, I have a hard time hearing and understanding what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dr. Lind. We are moving this to the next meeting, which is the July 21st meeting, and because your commissioner has requested that he'd like to be here, and the applicant has requested that they'd like him here. So this will be actually heard on the 21st. So technically, we are just opening it because it's a public meeting, but taking no action. Thank you, Mr. Lent. Sorry, Dr. Lent. Okay, with that, we will bring it back to the board, and we are on to item 21.
Madam Chair, there is no need for item 21 today. I'd like
Okay.
to move to item number 22, which is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
Okay, I see that we have 3 public comments, 2 emails, but there are 2 from Miss Judith Miller. One is a Zoom and one is an email. I need a ruling from District Attorney. Do we put the email on record, or do we read it and allow Miss Miller to also speak on Zoom? Oh, okay. So never mind, Mr. Watsvial, she has dropped off Zoom. So we will just go on to Madam Clerk. Could you please provide us with the emails?
Certainly. First up is Tammy Holtstill. I believe this meeting is a violation of the open meeting law because I don't believe the photos I have sent will be shown, and I'm not there in person to speak. The photos are of Arkansas, where staff removed the second level of the HESCO barriers and left the materials behind. The actual filler of the HESCOs is not native to our basin and is a violation of Washoe County regulation and Nevada statute, leaving it for future use out on the property like that, a permanent fill in a 100-year floodplain. This is not staff's fault, but upper management like Dwayne Smith and Dave Solero. This is a type of lack of respect we have seen for years now. I had hoped with new county manager things would change. Obviously, this is not the case. We were notified that this would have been completed when started, so Arkansas would be open for residents to use, but as you see in the photos, that is not the case. Like I said, this is leadership's fault, meaning from you, the commissioners down. Since I've been involved in 2017 to now, you have been a disgrace, and I wish others in our county would pay attention and vote you out of office. Change the look of Washoe County from the top down. Drain the swamp. Sincerely, Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Recovery Committee. She did submit 3 photographs, which I will place on the record.
Thank you.
Your next email was just received from Judith Miller. I will try and read it. Says, good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you to Commissioner Burke-Bigler for asking that the CAB's role be expanded to hear and make recommendations to address what our citizens need, want, and desire. I also think it is important to focus on the proposed short-term rental ordinance. However, since the Commissioners heard the first reading of the STR ordinance in February, we've experienced some situations that I believe warrant at least discussing 2 significant revisions. The parking situation in Incline Village is intolerable, not just in winter when roads must be clear for snow plowing, but also in summer when not nearly enough parking is available at the East Shore Trail and area beaches. Allowing unlimited vacation rentals with their typically higher than normal residential occupancy without requiring on-site parking is just going to exacerbate the problem. Please require STRs to not use any on-street parking. Governor Sisolak has declared short-term rentals to be essential licensed businesses, yet Washoe County's proposed ordinance does not recognize STRs as a business use in residential zones. Please consider either limiting STRs to areas zoned for tourist accommodations or alternatively require a special use permit or at least some provision that will limit their numbers. The existing proposal does not have anything like the safety and sanitation requirements that are imposed on other types of tourist accommodations. In the face of a pandemic, this is a serious shortcoming. Before Ms. Mullins comes back with revisions, please schedule an agenda item to revamp the STR ordinance based on experience in recent months. Thank you. Stay safe. Judith Miller, Incline Village. And that concludes all that I think we have, correct?
Okay, we have no other public comment, so we will close public comment and bring it back to the board for the final commissioners, county managers.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is item 23.
Madam Chair, if I could?
Yes, sir.
Again, this is Dave Watsfield. I just wanted to point out that the pictures that were provided by Ms. Holtstill were shown on the YouTube channel in the county's webpage as well. I just wanted to make that notation for the record.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watsfield.
All right, Madam Chair, that takes us to item 23, Commissioners, County Managers' announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commission updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Do you have anything additional, Mr. Manager?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Herman.
I wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate Commissioner Hartung on his award that he just received. I'll let him explain what the award was about.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Commissioner Hartung, I understand you just received an award. You're going to tell us about it.
Yeah, I received the Public Official of the Year award from the Water Environment Federation, which is a worldwide federation, and I, through the Water Innovation Institute at UNR, was nominated and received that award to be handed out sometime later this year. But thank you so much, Commissioner Herman, for acknowledging that. That's very kind. Thank you.
Congratulations, Commissioner Hartung. It's well deserved. You are our expert on water issues all around, and I appreciate everything you do for us. Do you have anything else to add, Commissioner Herman, Commissioner Hartung?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Commissioner Jung?
Congratulations, Commissioner Hartung, for your innovative approach to water resource management. And you put us on the map, dude, and I will be there when you receive it. So let's make sure they do it in the coal city. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung.
Thank you, guys, and seeing no other comments, we will adjourn our meeting and consider it adjourned for the day at 1:13. Thank you. Bye, everybody.